Welcome to Daredevil in the Details for the last time, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Disney's Daredevil Born Again, a digression collection brought to you by Method to the Madness and the ZeroIndent Patreon subscribers. I'm author DT McNeil, and after a season of watching Darth be smug about his predictions, today it's my time to be smug. I predicted not only one, but 3 plot critical concepts in this episode, and I couldn't be more smug about it. I'm joined as always by Patrick from A Method to the Madness, one of the few on the City Council to stand against the Safer Streets Initiative. Councillor Laverne, tell us about your concerns over the Safer Streets Initiative.
I'd rather not in a public forum, and I wish you hadn't said that out loud.
Okay, that's
I will
noted.
be in hiding for the next 2 weeks.
That's interesting. That's good to know. I'm just writing that down.
Well,
I'll note your disagreement. The mayor just wants to know that everyone, is on his side and understands the value of his initiative. That's interesting.
Sounds like an enemies list.
Well,
okay.
It's not. It's just a list that I'm making, and it happens to have people that disagree with us. That's totally normal and not fascist at all. So relax.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're joined as always by Darth, who once again I didn't write a bit for, but he successfully predicted nothing in this episode. So I don't know. Does he deserve a bit?
Well, I come with a lot of my own bits. I literally have had an enemies list, and I wonder how normal that is.
What? Sorry. I understand that it's very early to get derailed, but you need to say more. What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, just referencing the list that they were keeping of, people who disagreed with Fisk.
No,
and those
I
are the ones they
understood
need to watch
that.
out for, and...
What do you mean that you have an enemies list?
Well, if I ever go off the rails, I want to know who's the first target to be, you know?
You need direction.
You gotta plan for stuff.
When you go unhinged.
Are you the protagonist of like a sitcom somehow? Like, is this in 4 seasons? Is it going to turn out that like some drama you're into is caused by one of these enemies?
We shall see.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Well, I guess welcome to what will be for now the last episode of Daredevil in the Details. If season 2 ends up striking our fancy, we might jump back in next year. We'll see what happens. Of course, this show will go on in its sort of renewed form. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But for now, we are talking about Daredevil Born Again, Episode 9, Straight to Hell, which is the season finale of Disney's reboot of Daredevil. Now, we were kind of hot and cold on the last episode. In the edit, I noted that we kind of went back and forth a lot and ended up landing at a place of like general positivity and excitement, even if some of the maneuvers didn't quite work. I have been sitting on my feelings. So we finished that episode of recording. I went out to lunch, had a couple of beers, went home, and then sat with a bottle of whiskey and watched the season finale. And I've been sitting on my feelings for this episode for a fucking week. Okay, I need to know, what did you guys think of this episode as the season finale? I want to start with the kind of newcomer Darth. Darth, talk to me about your high-level feelings.
High level, I was over the moon just like I was with the last episode. I absolutely could not wait. I watched the last episode, the penultimate, and then immediately went into the finale because I could not help myself. I realized after the fact that there were a couple things I said that you looked confused by last time, and I was like, oh, that's because they were in the next episode.
That's why we have a method. I
just have the madness right now.
I was gonna say, where do you think the name comes from, brother? Okay, so you loved it, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there as always there were a few things that I would nitpick and change, like the explanation Matt doesn't give for why he did it, or why he saved Fisk, and I don't know, several other little things. The interaction with Frank, like some of the stuff just didn't really jive for me, even though the everything as a whole was like, yes, this is everything I would have wanted. Really hit you in the feels in several different places. Seeing Karen, all of it was awesome. I was over the moon.
Okay. Interesting. Patrick Laverne, the great Daredevil savant. What say you?
Yeah, okay, I liked it. This Disney reboot is I'm not as hot on it as the Netflix one. I think that's an extremely high bar. In fact, I'm usually pretty good at predicting how I feel about things. Before this show started, I'm like, I think this will be good. I don't think it'll match up to Netflix, and that's exactly how I feel about it now.
Mm-hmm.
This finale, it tied together everything that was going on in the show, I thought. And I see what it was cooking, like the Vanessa's turn to Fisk. Oh, sorry, not Vanessa. Heather's turn to Fisk. Punisher and Daredevil like teaming up at the end to take on the squad. I forget what they're called. Like it was doing everything right within the scope of its own show. And yeah, I like that as it's my turn to gloat now. As I predicted, it didn't wrap up everything, which I really liked. It was setting up for a long haul, probably like 3 seasons, I'd imagine.
Yep.
And yeah, it's sort of like committing to its swing, and I'm optimistic as to where it'll go. And I feel like there's a lot of with the ending. And with the city and chaos and stuff like that, I feel like it opens it up a lot more to potential storylines, scenes, cool moments, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That is, I think, well observed in that. Yes, you did absolutely go, hey, I would really like it if they if the ending sort of didn't wrap it all up and it sort of propelled it into like a greater peril, and that's absolutely what happened. Trying to articulate how I feel about this episode is challenging because it does this maneuver that I think is very difficult to pull off in storytelling, and whether it pulls it off or not, I think we'll get into as we sort of talk through the episode. But it does this maneuver where it undercuts the tone of some of the previous storytelling in order to reveal how fraught it actually was the whole time, right? The second that you get Karen back on screen, it's like breathing out for the first time since, we have that cut to like 1 year later in a lot of ways, where suddenly, and I think in particular for Matt, we've talked about the last sort of however many episodes being him building up this kind of manic energy, this sort of panic that is bubbling up within him, that is sort of buffing up against Heather. And then when Karen comes in, all of that energy goes away, and suddenly there's like an equilibrium that's restored to Matt in some ways, even if this thing hasn't been solved. And it has this curious effect. So I think I said in the group chat, I was like, oh my God, I finished it. I have to go back and watch the whole show. And I did for that reason. I wanted to see if, knowing where it went, some of the maneuvers hit a little differently or landed a little differently. And I have to be honest, it makes it a little bit less interesting because not because I know where it's going, right? That's in no small part the fun of us talking about the original Netflix's Daredevil. But I think it has a curious effect of making some of that feel less real and reinforcing Matt's supposition that this all feels a bit fake in some way. And so I think it sort of justifies some of Matt's feelings about his life, to the point where literally like his girlfriend joins up with his worst enemy, his entire apartment is destroyed, and by the sounds of it, his law firm is probably going to be dissolved, right? Like this life was in fact fake, and there is something more real for him that is returning here at the end. So I'm curious to see what they do with it, as they move forward. And I did watch to the end of the credits, and it does say Daredevil will be back in season 2. So they were very confident they were making another, which is
it's like I've never actually seen this movie, but I've just I've read about it and heard people talk about it, and so I know all its like themes and stuff. But this reminds me of like Total Recall, about how the real life is like the the action and the chaos and everything going wrong, and like the the sort of like banal nuanced life is too strange and complicated, and therefore like it's you're easily able to reject it in favor of this like high stakes like action set. And that's a good point. Like it does seem like Daredevil can't like move on from or move too far away from his track of like the traditional Daredevil story we've had so far.
Which this makes me think that whatever they're doing in the next with the rest of the show must be completely net new, right? Like I think we got a real sense for like some of the rewrites and some of the retooling in this season. I can't imagine anything we get moving forward is part of the original plan, right? This just all feels so out of left field. Like, and there are some maneuvers that, we can talk about when we get to them where you go, oh, this both feels like a contemporary commentary or pushing against contemporary ideas, but also pushing against ideas that like the original show was toying with, back in its run. And so I think it has a timeless, it's leveraging a lot of timeless ideas, and they feel oddly timely because of the state of the world. So I also wonder like how much coming back to the show when there isn't Nazis in the White House, I wonder how much of that is going to feel different, and how much of that is going to maybe feel more resonant and less like a commentary. Because I think there's a tendency sometimes to look at a show like this and go, they are just doing XYZ commentary. And these ideas have been around in America since Bush Jr., right? This isn't like a new concept. And, if you go back before that, right, Reagan and sort of the end of history, I don't know. That's also the other thing that you sort of evoked for me there, Pat, is like with the Daredevil in the original run, it feels very timeless. And, we talked a lot in season 3 about police and what their show would look like if it was made after, the moment that Daredevil is in, when the world's view of policing, fundamentally changes. And then this show comes out and it's very much doing all of those things that we talked about. Hey, wouldn't that be interesting? So I don't know. I wonder what another piece of the story looks like. And if it really does become, almost a dystopian sort of neo-noir, right? Like the whole city's under lockdown. There's a curfew at 8 p.m. It really becomes that sort of classical, you're locked in this Judge Dredd style city, which could be really cool and interesting. If they go with the full hog on doing the dystopian sci-fi thing. That could be really fun.
Yeah, I'm down to see that.
Yeah, well, they got the technology.
Like I want more characters to come in from other places in this universe. Yeah.
Who's your top? We didn't talk about this last time. Who's your top? Like, I want to see him get in there. Who's the character that you're like, I want to get him in the mix? Obviously, the Defenders is like everyone's first, but is there anyone outside the Defenders where you're like, ooh, that'd be cool?
I mean, I don't see it happening, but like someone like Moon Knight, that'd be cool.
That's fun.
Yeah. Isn't Moon Knight in the Midnight Suns?
Not in the game, but I believe in the comics. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I've seen like sort of art where it's the Defenders and Moon Knight as well, and I was like, oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, mixing some of the magic-y, gaudy stuff in there. That could be interesting. Yeah. What about you, Darth? Who's your who's your dream person for season 2 that you want to see pop up?
I mean, I don't know about dream, but Spider-Man is a very natural one. There's a ton of the comics where they like team up a lot, and their powers are comparable, so that they could sort of fight the same level of villain as opposed to the intergalactic super warriors that Daredevil can't really touch, and for the most part, Spider-Man can't really do much against. Where you need like Thor or Thor, Mjolnir, Captain America, or whatever.
Right.
But I also loved I loved the new I don't remember her name, but the new Hawkeye, the girl.
Kate Bishop.
I thought Kate Bishop, yeah, I thought she was fantastic. And then like everyone has been, I haven't seen it, but everyone's been raving about the new movie out now. The villain one.
Thunderbolts.
Thank you. What's her name? Yelena. Adored her and her interaction with Kate Bishop and everything. So really, my dream would be for them to, ironically, like do what we have been talking about in like intermix those characters more than they have been, because they've been keeping them really, really separate, and not really doing not leading up to a full team up like the full Avengers eventually was. Like all of these TV shows have mostly been kind of separate with just occasional cameos in different places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say Marvel tends to like keep the TV and movies division separate, which is why I think Spider-Man is super unlikely, just because don't they have that thing where Kingpin can't appear in the movies and vice versa, Spider-Man can't appear in the TV shows?
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with the way that union contracts work with actors, and film and TV acting have like very different stipulations and rules and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I mean, I think that obviously Spider-Man would be interesting. I just don't know. I don't want to be mean. I think if you put Tom Holland next to Charlie Cox, it makes Tom Holland look like he's never acted before in his entire life, is my only concern.
Well, that's realistic. I mean, you've got this bright-eyed kid that doesn't, I mean, he's grown up a lot through the movies, but he's still like, that should be on purpose. Like, put him next to a seasoned human being and you're like, oh, this is obviously a kid next to an adult, and the clashing that they would have would just feel really natural, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with that. Okay, how do I say this? The difference between movie actors and TV actors is like huge. Like it's a completely different, it's a different ask entirely, right? The ability to sustain a show. We talked about this a lot in Sherlock with Martin Freeman, I think. The ability to sustain a show as a central character, like as a protagonist, and make that interesting and dynamic, and bring constant drama and interest and gravity to your scene work, is a completely different ask than like, it's a 3-month shoot. You've got 2 hours of screen time where you're on and film for an hour and a half. You've got these big beats. They're very, very different asks. And I just think that Charlie Cox is a consummate TV actor, and Tom Holland is a perfectly good film actor. I don't know how he'd go. If it was a couple of episodes, I think it'd be fine. I think if you're asking any kind of sustained usage of that character, that's where I think there's only so much using the real qualities of those two people would get you through, especially if it's high stakes stuff like it always is in Daredevil. I don't disagree with your instincts. I just think it's a different ball game than what Holland is used to. Not better or worse, just very, very different. All right, that's enough preamble, but
it's only 20 minutes.
That's quick for us. All right, let's get our hands dirty. Let's get stuck in. So we are talking about Daredevil Born Again, Episode 9, Straight to Hell, directed by Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, written by Heather Belson and Dario Scarta-Payne. Of course, Belson and Scarta-Payne being the showrunners. Patrick, when you are ready, could we please hear the fairly lengthy summary of Episode 9 of Daredevil Born Again?
In the aftermath of the shooting, a much-reduced Matt Murdock wakes in hospital. Matt continues to unravel as he puts together that Foggy must have discovered something Vanessa needed to be concealed. Something that would get his case thrown out. Elsewhere, Fisk and Vanessa cope with the aftermath of Dex's assassination attempt. Fisk instructs his secret police to close the city down and encourages them to discard due process. Buck arrives at the hospital with designs on killing Matt. Fisk enacts his plan and shuts down the power in New York City, just as he closes all of the bridges and tunnels in and out. Matt Murdock returns to his apartment to find none other than the Punisher in his kitchen. Fisk's goons are inbound. Daredevil suits up and Frank locks in. Daredevil and the Punisher fight off the goons. Frank shows no mercy, killing goon after goon with his special brand of gun fu. Meanwhile, Daredevil struggles to stay upright, his bullet wound forcing him to rely on brute force and his billy club. Detective North reveals himself to be Hector's killer, and Matt chooses to spare him. Matt's apartment is destroyed, and he and Frank limp away from the explosion only for a car to pull up and none other than Karen Page to step out. Karen drives the boys to Frank's lair where they patch up. Meanwhile, Daniel Blake threatens the city council into supporting Fisk's Safer Streets initiative. Outside, the city descends into chaos. Looting runs rampant, and the police exercise lethal force, shooting criminals dead in the street. Matt and Karen head to the old firm's storage locker, where they reignite a spark of their old chemistry. They find the files of Foggy's case, only to learn Red Hook is a free port. The Fisks are building their own city-state. Frank does a hitman level to sneak into Red Hook, where he controls the army of Punisher fanboys. He kills a dozen before he's captured. Fisk kills Commissioner Gallo in front of the senior NYPD leadership. Matt and Karen investigate Red Hook and head back to the city to round up an army. Fisk recruits Heather to be his Commissioner of Mental Health. Using the rioting and violence as justification, Fisk enacts martial law. Elsewhere, Daredevil declares his intention to take back the city, standing in Josie's bar, no longer chained by the dark, but freed by it. In a post-credit scene, Frank escapes from his cage. And so the temperate streets of New York wake under the rule of the Kingpin. But as long as there is hope, there is resistance. Rebellion. There, standing against the corruption and violence, if you look very closely through the dusty window of an old bar, you might just catch a glimpse of the Daredevil in the details. Very good.
Well done, Patrick. Very well read. There you go. See, I did the thing with the name of the show. Because
very good.
Yeah. Could you imagine if, and I would only say this, I don't mean to beat you up about this again, Darth, but we were on the penultimate episode of our Sherlock recording when Darth realized why the show was called Give Up After 3. And I was like, dude, we've been doing this for like 9 months. What are you talking about? It was such a great moment. I'm just imagining, Pat, you having that same realization, being like, wait a second.
Even though I was the name one who named
you
the
came
show.
up with the name. Yeah, exactly. You're like, hang on a minute. Okay, let's get stuck in. So there's a lot to get through in this episode. And you can't even tell that we're avoiding talking about it so that we don't have to end the show. So Vanessa the first thing we get is a flashback to Vanessa going to visit Dex in some kind of a mental institution. She sort of, would you say, okay, this is, I'm curious how you guys read this scene. This is like a little bit of a prologue tag before the episode starts. She sort of manipulates, coerces, I'm not sure what you would call how she sort of plays him here. But she basically says like, look, I need you to kill, I'm going to get you out. And what I need for in exchange is you to do this assassination. And she sort of plays on the fact of like, this is no way to live. He's clearly drugged the fuck up. And this is the agreement, right? She'll get him out of prison if he kills the lawyer. Yeah, how do you guys read this interaction? Is this Vanessa doing a sort of Fisk-style manipulation? Is this earnest? How do you read her intentions and how this plays out?
Oh, I thought that was total manipulation. I mean, I feel like her whole arc this season is that she is taking over Fisk's vacant spot, after he's stepped into, a new role as mayor, kind of thing. She's really just as bad as Fisk by the end of this episode, or but she has been, and we sort of get that confirmed for us. Yeah, I mean, she's just straight up manipulating him, and Dex is in a really sorry place. He's drugged the fuck up.
Not good.
Yeah. yeah, she says to him like, "Oh, I can help you get your mind back," kind of thing. Which I feel like, just generally with this episode, I feel like that this episode sets Dex up to, do some interesting things in the future seasons. Like in season 3, you really like dive deep into his mind. You have these slow scenes where you get like his history, and you understand like his, you understand his mind. You don't get much of that in this season, and I feel like it's because I feel like it's the thing general in storytelling is that once you have that slow setup, you can then do these big, quick, dramatic beats in like a sequel, and I feel like that seems like where Dex is going. He's broken. He's seeing blue, literally and figuratively. Yeah. And I just feel like they're going to do something interesting with him.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, if I was writing this character, I would have him, like, wage an all-out war against the Fisks or something, and it only makes things worse. Type of, like, like, he might give them increasing justification for the severity of their, escalating sort of fascistic actions, and he could sort of be, the characters could be like, oh, we have to stop him, he's giving them an excuse, but actually, his increasing escalating violence is the thing that pushes the Fisks to close their grip too tightly, which produces the rebellion. That kind of classic thing in some left ideology, in particular, anarchism, like the accelerationist stuff. I could see that being an angle you could play with Dex.
You know what I want to see is like in season 2 is some like, I don't know, Matt and Karen and the other people on their team have a plan. They're gonna like ambush Fisk at some event or something, but then there's a wild card and the Punisher appears and he's trying to do his own thing, but then another wild card appears and there's Dex with a sniper up on the roof and there's like all this chaos going on in this one moment. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
And imagine Dex and Frank actually working together.
Ooh.
Well, I was thinking, what if they were trying to like shoot at each other? I think that would be cool because like they're both like really competent marksmen.
Oh, that could be fun.
Like, what would a fight between them look like? Yeah.
Or you could, they could be doing that scene from like the second John Wick where they're in like a crowded room and they're shooting like silenced pistols at each other.
Yeah.
Which and Darth is about to say some shit like, actually that would be really loud because they're not silencers, they're suppressors. But like, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean. I
have learned to let that go.
Okay. Interesting. Because I saw the glint in your eye. Yes. I agree. I think the other thing that's interesting here is previously, we talked about Dex being manipulated or groomed by Fisk. And this is Vanessa kind of in a lot of ways, picking up the Kingpin torch, and quite literally being like, okay, let me like pick up this thread. Because if I recall correctly, when he steals back Rabbit in a Snowstorm from the Holocaust survivor, she kind of, she says something to him like, are you the new Wesley or something like that. She's already sort of got her hooks into him in some ways, in seeing him as sort of the prodigal sort of Fisk son, the surrogate child of the family sort of thing. So she already has the hooks in from that previous experience they have together. Just kind of, yeah. I love how awful they've made her. She's not... You know how we talked last time about like the civility of the far right, and what they call civility is not in fact, they do stuff in suits, and so they think it's civil, but actually it's they're fucking barbarian blood psychopaths who will kill anyone to make a quick buck, and this is really just the perfect Vanessa, like makes you go, oh, she's been awful like this the whole time. Like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it.
Well, I think at the beginning she she really wasn't though. At the beginning it was like, oh, you blew up the warehouses full of the guys who kidnapped the kid. Oh, okay, you're killing bad guys. That's fine. And then enough time around Fisk has transitioned her from someone who was like mostly a good person, just kill the really bad guys, and now she's like taking away people's meds and coercing them to do whatever she wants and ordering people's deaths and all of this stuff. So I think that was a transition that she went through.
I was talking about just in this show, right? That like
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because yes, I agree with that. But I think it does a good job because when you first re-meet her, you kind of feel like it kind of feels like she's rebuilt the Fisk organization, but with like a brand of, it's like airtight and it's civilized and it's there's an agreement between it. In that first scene we get with them, she's like, hey, look, like no, like you don't get to be angsty with each other. You understand the agreement. These people do their work, this thing for free. Like it's like a gentleman's version of Fisk's organization, is the appearance that you get. And then actually maybe it turns out it's worse than his ever was, because that mask of civility is a perfect cover for the far worse brutality that she's enacting behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. She's wearing a mask, if you will.
She's wearing a mask now.
Deep stuff going on here.
Now, Pat, have masks come up before? This is the first time, I think.
Yeah, it might be a small motif.
Might be a little motif. I think the bigger motif is blinking red lights, if I have to be honest with you. So, one for one in some ways. Yeah, definitely. And we'll talk about masks and whether this episode has much to do with masks at the end. But it's a curious decision to include that scene. You could imagine this episode just starts with the credits again and we don't get that little tag. Probably largely unchanged, but I like that it digs the sort of it digs the hole a little bit deeper for Vanessa here. You could have played this a little bit more evil and given us a little bit more, but I think they balance it well. And it comes across as a manipulation that might be tinged by some feelings of actual care that we know she might feel toward Dex given their history, or some ownership or responsibility. I like that you could read this as a little bit muddy, a little bit less clear than it actually is. Then the two big opening beats we have are Fisk and Vanessa kind of dealing with the fallout of the shooting, and then Matt also dealing with the fallout of the shooting. I want to call out one detail I did notice, which is Fisk's white suit is stained with Matt's blood in a very similar pattern to Fisk's blood that stains Rabbit in a snowstorm. Like it's sort of the same projectile direction. And this show, classic Daredevil loves doing stuff like that, where it's evocative and makes you go, what does that mean? And it doesn't. It's just there to make you feel something, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did either of you notice?
No, I was picturing you calling up your mom and being like, so do you know anything about blood splatter patterns?
If she said yes, I'd be like, and we have bigger problems. I don't know if that would surprise me though. If my mom turned out to know about blood splatter patterns, I don't think that would be surprising.
I mean, no, your mom's a mystery. She's always got something new.
Yeah. I feel like that she'd be like, oh, like it came up in my book club or whatever. Or it'd be like, oh no, I did like, well, I think she taught a forensics class at one point, so she might actually be keyed into that stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Very ironically, that's gonna lead me into like pointing out a Cinema Sins type thing.
Okay, perfect.
Like for Fisk to have blood on him, there has to be an exit wound, which means that Fisk would have had to have been shot in order for Matt's blood to be on Fisk.
I could have exited Matt at an angle and missed Fisk, but the blood still sprays on him.
Yeah, or he's wearing his bulletproof clothing. Or alternatively, as Matt gets shot and falls into his arms, it's entirely possible that's how he got blood on him.
Could be.
Could be. Could be any number of things. Could be just for dramatic effect. Maybe it's not even Matt's blood. Maybe he was eating a sausage roll and he spilled ketchup. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Fisk had a ketchup packet in his pocket for later. And Matt just happened to squish it.
I want to quickly litigate something because I was having an argument about this last night and I got absolutely flamed for it. Pat, meat pies, you were tomato sauce on a meat pie or no tomato sauce on a meat pie?
Yeah, tomato sauce.
Yeah, interesting. Because I would rather kill myself. I think that it's
really wow.
I just think that why are we adding this sugary additive to the gravy of the meat pie is the whole appeal. Do you know, like, why am I adding tomato sauce to that? I don't add tomato sauce to steak. I'm not an animal.
Well, it's like it has a nice saltiness to it that complements the meat.
That complements the meat?
Yeah.
You're out of your fucking mind. This is... What are you going to tell me next? You have barbecue sauce on a fucking hot dog? You psycho. Christ.
Yes.
Christ. Anyway, I just sound off in the comments.
I was over here. I was over here giggling because I'm like, A, what's a meat pie? B, what's a tomato? The B was just being sarcastic.
Okay.
But...
Can you, Darth, Google for me 4 and 20 pie? Exactly how you expect it. 4 and 20 pie. I'm curious if you've ever seen an actual meat pie. I think like a 4 and 20 is like a quintessential Australian pie, right, Pat?
Yes, but I wouldn't recommend it.
No, I'm not saying eat it. Like, they're not good, but like that's like... I imagine if there was anything
it's the classic
commercialized and made it across.
Yeah. Yeah.
An Australian pastry brand.
Yeah. So it's a pie, like a pastry, like a bakery pastry, but then inside it's basically like gravy and like chunks of steak. They're so good. They are like truly one of the greatest forms of like food delivery. And if you get a really good one, like if you buy a lush one, like a luxury one, you are eating good. Do you know what I mean? Or like a little party
The best
pie.
ones are like spread out thin.
Ooh.
And you can like take like actual bites out of them.
Yeah.
Without having to like go top and bottom.
Okay, yeah, we've got chicken pot pies and turkey pot pies, and it'd be in that same vein.
Same vein, yeah. But the difference is they're individual. Like, yeah. Anyway, a meat pie. If you can find one, Darth, you should try a meat pie before next recording. Or if you can get one like frozen, you should prepare it for the recording, and we can do a meat pie review. That's a new addition. The ZeroIndent reviews, also food now. That's our pivot. That's if we do. It's the same show. But we've added a mukbang element, and the kids are loving it. The TikTok kids are all over it.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway.
And the title is going to be American Tries a Tomato.
American Tries Meat Pie. Yuck. American Tries Fruit for the first time. I'm kidding. I know you eat healthy now. Okay. Let's go to... Healthier. You still eat the weirdest combination of shit. We can't get down this rabbit hole, Pat, but every time Darth tells me, like... So Darth doesn't put together meals in the same way that you would think of... Now, because this is important ZeroIndent lore. Me and Pat are both avid cooks. We love to cook. We both love being in the kitchen. We love doing, like, a lush meal. Darth doesn't really have a concept of a meal. Darth will combine elements together to eat at the same time that have no material relationship. If you know what I mean. So like he's not doing like, oh, let me do like a ragu and like some green beans on like pasta or something like that. Like he's not doing that. He's doing like, I have a third of a piece of steak left. I have some sushi and I have like a potato. And that's like that will go on the plate together as like a dinner.
Mm-hmm. You just in it for the nutrients and the calories.
And some rice cakes on the side. Might throw some barbecue sauce and mustard on top, just because.
Boy. Anyway, let's not dwell because it makes me crazy every time we talk about it.
Hey, I'm weird. I'm weird in America too. This is just a me thing.
Oh yeah, no, I understand. Americans know what a meal is because they eat giant ones. You know what I mean? Like, there's something else going on with you, my friend. There's neurodivergence. Then there's like every time you send me a photo of what you're eating, I'm like, this. No, I don't understand.
Yeah, the funniest quote was, I think I was a young teenager when Mom said this. So this has been going on like my whole life. This weird food combinations that I do, and she was like, "Yeah, you have the taste buds of a pregnant woman."
Yeah,
and that phrasing has stuck with me. I'm like, that's kind of it. Like, I'll dip a pickle in ice cream, and if I think it'll taste good, I'll do it.
That does sound good though. The salty and the sweet, like that makes sense to me. Can I tell you, ice cream, vanilla ice cream with a little bit of balsamic vinegar is really good. So I imagine the pickle and the ice cream, because it's the same vinegar style bitterness. Because my dad did that, and I was like, oh my god, this is the most boomer thing of all time, and it's good. Okay, Matt wakes up in the hospital. He's just... brother, the first thing he says, Heather, like, touches his hand, and then he goes, Karen, and I was like, oh... Like, I felt that through the screen. I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's...
As a big oof.
It's a big oof.
Yeah.
And I think these episodes have done, the last 3 in particular, ever since she shot Muse, these episodes have done a good job of producing the divide between Matt and Heather, but not making it like a dramatic TV character divide. Like, it doesn't feel like a, Bold and the Beautiful, like, they're breaking up every week and they're getting back together. Like, it feels like this growing divide at the foundation of their relationship that might be able to be resolved. And I think here, in this moment, this is where when he says Karen, that's like the moment in my mind when the relationship is basically over. Even if neither of them have quite realized it yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're cutting the sandwich down the middle, that's like your knife goes through the last piece of the bread, even if you haven't realized that you've finished cutting the sandwich yet. You know, it's that moment.
Yeah.
I wonder if what you're describing is...
You go, Darth.
You want to go ahead? I wonder if what you're describing is that it just is done so naturally that it doesn't... Nothing feels forced in why their relationship is faltering, because he is outright lying to her, and like, even if we didn't know, we could probably be able to tell, just like she can tell, that he is lying and making up excuses and all of this stuff, and it is completely reasonable that this situation would put a strain on them, as opposed to some of the like over the top excuses that other love stories might give you for why they force in trouble in the relationship. This feels so naturally done that you're like, yeah, I'd be having a problem too if I were either one of these characters. I don't know how I'd talk to Heather, and I don't know how I'd deal with Matt acting this way.
Yeah. Well observed.
I think the way their relationship has been one of like the standouts of this season. Like, just the way it's so uncomfortably sort of real and like raw, and they don't leave on a like one note kind of thing. Like, and as you said that, I just realized like this is the last scene they have together, and like their relationship is like so up in the air. It's like there's like. Yeah, nothing really gets like talked about or resolved or anything.
It reminds me a little bit of how the Netflix show was forced to retroactively wrap up the Karen and Matt relationship, because it sort of gets robbed of that with the Defenders. So they have to do the flashbacks where he tells Karen he's Daredevil. Mm-hmm. And that almost relationship is... They talk about it later. Like, they have several conversations later on in the show between Matt and Karen where they litigate what happened. And this feels like a show that will really want to not have Matt and Heather do that until the very last minute. And I think that's probably a good instinct here. Like, I can't imagine, episode 1, season 2, Matt goes to Heather's apartment and they have an argument about the fact that she's working for Fisk. Like, I just don't know if we see them together again on screen for a while. It feels like it earns some space from the show in some ways. Yeah. There you go. All right. I did want to call out the plot thing, which is that Matt figures out that Foggy must have been sitting on something that... So, like, it turns out that it wasn't actually about the case itself. It's about something that Foggy was going to use in the case that is the problem, which I think is a really clever little inflection, like a little inflection point where it's not necessarily that the evidence or that the winning of the case or, like, it's not the case itself, it's how Foggy is planning to win the case that is the thing, or get the case resolved that's the thing, which is just clever. Like, I think a more obvious TV show wouldn't do that. It would be like, it would keep it really simple and straightforward. But the fact that it's something larger than the case itself is a very good writing instinct from my perspective, and keeps the show continually getting more and more fraught. Like, it feels like it ramps up some of the tensions here of like, well, what could it possibly have been that it was worth killing Foggy and his client, to make this case go away.
Can you summarize it for me?
Yeah, so you know how last episode I was like, wouldn't it be funny if the reason why Fisk picked Red Hook is because it'd be like international waters? That's actually the case. So Red Hook is a freeport, and freeport's basically...
I see, yeah.
Yeah. And so Foggy was going to use the fact that the crime that his client allegedly committed took place on a freeport in Red Hook. He's going to use that as an excuse to get the case thrown out.
And that would draw attention to Fisk's plans.
Vanessa's plans. So this is the clever part. It's Vanessa's plan. So Vanessa, at the time, right? You got to remember Fisk at the time. This is 1 year ago before the events of the story. This is just before Foggy's death. Fisk is MIA. He's missing in action. And so Vanessa, and whether or not they've had this plan for a long time, like it's unclear. But Vanessa coerces Dex into killing Foggy and his client in order to conceal the fact that there is this freeport, because she then uses that freeport to rebuild Fisk's organization, trading art through Red Hook without paying taxes and without doing all these other things. And then it seems to me that when Fisk comes back, she folds his mayorship into that plan. And him becoming mayor then aligns... She's like, the extent of her plan was, I'm just going to use this freeport to do art smuggling forever, to pay my organization to build my criminal empire. And then when Fisk comes in, he's like, well, if I become mayor, we could make this into a city-state. Like, it feels like there was an existing plan that then Fisk built upon when he comes back. That's how I read it anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, except I think my reading is a bit different in that Fisk was... It seems like throughout the season he was holding his mayor cards close to his chest, even from Vanessa, and there was that tension between them was like, as Lucas says, like, do you even know why he's running for mayor? And I feel like at the time the answer was no, but I think that still makes sense, because Vanessa was still making use of the freeport to smuggle art and stuff. And then I think maybe the way I read it is Fisk, when he comes back into Vanessa's life and, he finds out what the whole deal with this port is, he gets like this inspiration to use his office to, build a city-state kind of thing.
Yeah, that's sort of my supposition. It's like it's their two great criminal minds come together and he goes, wait, what if we could do more with this? Or she goes, what if we could do more with this type of thing? Yeah. Does that make sense to you, Darth? You look deep in thought.
I was trying to recall if we know for a fact that Wilson does know about the freeport, because his entire plan is to rebuild that port so that it is a major shipping port, which will bring business back to the city, right?
No, that's the lie he uses to get it funded.
So what's the goal then if he's not rebuilding the literal shipping docks?
He's building his,
because obviously the city's gonna see like if there's no docks going up or whatever, right?
well, he's building his fortress. Like we see it at the end. Like he's literally building like a fortress on Red Hook where he can kind of rule as Kingpin. Presumably he is rebuilding the ports to do that trading. Like I think that's also true, but that's not the heart of why he's doing it.
Well, so the whole point of me bringing that up is that if they do reestablish all of those trade routes that used to exist there, then now that this knowledge is assumedly like public, that this is a free port, that would like ruin all of his plans for actually like making money off of the incoming ships, right? Because if it's a free port, that means something totally different than if the city owns the port, right?
Yes, but if they're going to declare themselves a city-state, then it's a whole other proposition. Like, because he could then be like, from Red Hook, I'm going to declare that New York is a city-state, right? And then much like Singapore, it becomes its own country. And that becomes a whole other equation, because then he's a fascist dictator of his own country.
This is also hilarious because like without the current stuff with all of the tariffs between America and the rest of the world, like I never would have ever made this connection. And I'm talking about like trade routes coming in and how will the stuff get taxed when the boat lands. And I'm like, I never would have thought about that before this real life idiocy started going on.
I actually think that you would have, because we've talked about it before in The Phantom Menace, right? This, again, ooh. I hate to like be the guy that keeps saying it. None of this shit that's happening is new. The only difference is like a billionaire bought his way to become the second president for 3 months, and they're saying the Nazi shit out loud. But in 2002, 2003, this Bush Jr. was doing all of this shit, right? Like this was the whole maneuver after 9/11, was like, and even before it to an extent. And you get that in The Phantom Menace, where Lucas is parlaying some of that on screen with the opening of that film, where the Emperor is forcing these guys to maintain this trade blockade because they're not getting the tariff agreements that they need, or that the Emperor is pushing for, that he knows will produce and exert ideology over Padme in order to continue sort of pushing the levers of power and make the war escalate. So I actually think you would have. I just think it would have been less direct, is my feeling. But I do know what you mean. It's been in the air.
Like the trade war like the trade blocking that's going on Gorman as well. We need to do something about that.
Yeah.
I really wanted to talk about it, but I was like, I don't know how up to date y'all are.
Well, I don't want to say anything because I know that a lot of people, the audience of Big Andor people, so I don't want to like spoil anything, even tip a hat in any direction.
Tip a beret
in any direction. But spoilers, Andor season 2 is really good. They managed to build an entire show from a wardrobe department, basically, where they're like, what if fashion? And I'm like, yeah, what if fashion?
It's such a good looking show.
I straight up told someone yesterday that I think it is now the best bit of Star Wars media. People used to say Empire Strikes Back, and then like Rogue One was second, and there's this whole tier list, but I think it's got everything beat at this point. I'm a big fan of those filmmakers.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Hey, if you like Andor, go watch Michael Clayton. Everything Gilroy does hits. We should do that for a Patreon bonus. I think you guys would love Michael Clayton. That'd be a really fun one to dive back into. George Clooney playing a great lawyer. Tilda Swinton playing a incredible bad guy. Absolutely fantastic film. And was free for a while on YouTube.
Okay.
There you go. I've decided we're doing that for a Patreon bonus. That is how production works. We will do Michael Clayton. Okay. So let's talk about Fisk. Okay, so he basically sends his goons out. This is like the foundational plot of the episode. He sends his goons out with explicit orders to just like go and kill people. Like, you know, Gala was like, so you'd be condoning like you know, it'd be unlawful. You'd be condoning unlawful activity. And he's like, no, encouraging. And you're like, whoa, mask off, mask off moment for Fisk. As he sends Buck to go and assassinate Matt, with the justification being that a dead hero is better than a live vigilante. And this is his, he gives Sheila a little bit of ideology here. Or he sort of positions this ideology. So this Fisk says to Sheila, I've been giving giving thought to what you said earlier about threats and public safety. Sheila says, I'm so glad, sir. Sometimes our reactions are worse than the offense that caused them. Fisk, Sheila, in business, there's always a tipping point in a negotiation. We are in that place with this city. It just needs a little push, and they'll come to us with open arms. Sheila says, and what would that push be? And that's when he basically says, hey, I need you to go find me whoever is in charge of the power grid. Now, the keen listener might realize that Fisk, being a character with a background in criminal business and also being in charge of a city-state, if you like a nation, might be quite timely. But I also think this is just very consistent characterization for Fisk to use his quote-unquote business background as a sort of justification to Sheila that is less offensive to her than I'm doing a thing that is going to force people into violence, which will justify my martial law, right? He gives her like a legitimate reason in some ways. Even if it's pretty clear that she doesn't believe it, she uses it seems like herself to justify it. I don't know. I don't know what you guys make of Sheila here, because then she and Gallo have that conversation where he's like, yeah, I'm going over his head. I'm gonna, you know, there are still sane people in this building. But then she dimes him out later. So I'm curious what you guys make of Sheila. Is she just in full survival mode? Does she buy into some of what Fisk is doing? Yeah, I'm curious where you guys land with this character.
Well, first of all, I thought it was really unclear whether she did rat out Gallo. Because, like, you know, the editing sort of, I guess, implies it, but it's a kind of strange way. Because, like, Fisk is listening to the recording on the phone, and then Sheila is not in the room. She's, like, outside the room. She's sort of sobbing. So, you know, I guess you could put it together that she recorded it, gave the phone to Fisk, went outside to have a cry while Fisk listened to that, I guess. But yeah, I think you are meant to sort of put it together that she told on him. But yeah, there's another sort of like theme running through this episode about people trying to survive, like that chauffeur that Gallo has, where he's like, you know, fresh ink, like, are you part of the Fisk squad now? And he's like, yeah, you know, just trying to survive out here, kind of thing. I think there's a bit of that going on, and yeah, I think you're right. I think making Fisk, you know, making his actions palatable to Sheila, you know, in a describing it in a fascistic way is like, you know, helping her, giving her that little push, as he describes it, just needs a little push to, you know, get the ball rolling. And I feel like she has been pushed over the edge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's giving like it's that kind of thing where it's like she pushed back the whole way. Like she did essentially everything she could up until this last moment where suddenly like there's nothing left to do and it's kind of out of her control. You know, there's only, I think in a different world, if Daniel Blake doesn't join the campaign, she might have been able to stop Fisk from doing all of this. But the fact that the combination of Buck and Blake are there means that she's basically powerless in this situation. And she's essentially a hapless observer because she knows, and this is the trick. This is like the trick of this kind of fascist project is the only way to stand up is to put yourself in danger. And that's a really big risk if you're the only one standing up, right? If you're the single proletariat standing up against the bourgeoisie capitalist, it's just you, right? If you're the only person standing up against the empire, it's just you. But it's strength in numbers and it's strength in unity. And that is the theme in some ways of this finale, right? It's Matt can't get it done by himself. He needs Frank. Matt can't get it done without Karen. He needs Karen. Matt can't get it done without the city of New York. And the difference is Mayor Fisk doesn't think he needs the city. He thinks he can control the city. He thinks that he can scare the city. He thinks that he can use the city for his own means. And I'm curious to see how far Scarter is willing to take the illusions, if you like, or the similarities, if you like, to Ireland and Northern Ireland, and how far he ends up taking some of the kind of symbolism and the allegorization of this moment for Fisk and the IRA and things like that, and how far left he is willing to take the politics of the show in order to replicate what actually happened. I think will be interesting to keep an eye on as they sort of move through dealing with the consequence of this season. But certainly, yeah, I did notice a theme in this episode of like coming together as this terrible, terrible thing begins to happen, And she's alone, so she can't do anything.
Well, the ironic thing is that she was offered she was offered by the commissioner to not be alone. He was like, come with me and we could stand up to Fisk by going, to the feds. And she, denied that. And an interesting line that she had earlier on, and I don't recall exactly who she said this to, but it may have been Blake, but she was like, I was here before you and I will be here after you. So it was a very much like, I'm going to do whatever it takes for me to stay in this position. Granted, at that point, she was talking about an entirely different level of existence. But now she's like, okay, I'm going to turn this dude over. He's going to get killed. And this is what I got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in order to really explore these themes of fascism, you have to have pretty unheroic people,
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to have them put in positions that are, life is a series of personal compromises, but the way that this show is trying to explore these things is going, what if it was compromise after compromise after compromise and you didn't realize how far down the slope you'd fallen until you looked back up the hill and went, holy shit, right? This is an episode of people looking back up the hill and going, oh, it might be too late. And yeah, you have to have people like Sheila, who she seems like a good person from what we can tell, who is playing along, and then it's too late, right? Even to an extent, BB, in making her compromises to get closer to the truth about her father's, her uncle's murder, beg your pardon, by Fisk, she makes a series of compromises that in some ways allow Blake to be promoted or don't prevent him from being promoted or don't prevent him from getting thrown out. The fact that she doesn't choose to dime him out for threatening her and putting herself in jeopardy by doing a write-up of how this dude threatened a journalist. Maybe that's the element that they needed in order for that, it's one less ally for Fisk in this project. Maybe that's enough to tip the scales, right? It's all of these compromises along the way that produce the final outcome, rather than, I think, another show that might pin this on one character and be like, if only Sheila had done XYZ, right? But there's no version of reality where there's one single thing that Sheila could have done to prevent this, right? It's everything in some ways.
It's also interesting to compare it to the previous people that Fisk manipulated. It was all blackmail that the feds, the one the lead lady, Fisk had her son killed, so then the woman divorced her husband so she and her daughter would be safe. And it was like every quote unquote like noble person was forced to do the wrong thing or their family would be killed. And in this one, we don't really have that. We just kind of have him like throwing around his weight and people are terrified and they do the wrong thing just out of fear, but not out of blackmail, which seems like it's a like very intentional change, but I'm not sure what that change is supposed to, what is this new theme and how Fisk has changed and how he's, manipulating people.
Well, just that his power is now legitimate, so people have no recourse is, I think, the main difference there, right?
Yeah, because like the difference with like SEC Hatley, which is the character you're talking about, is she's in this position where she actually goes, let me minimize the damage of this corruption, like you said, Darth, by like divorcing her husband and telling him to take the kid, and by trying to protect Ray Nadeem from getting a promotion, because she knows he's over leveraged and all of these things. I think the difference is what Pat said, which is because this is now legitimate, there's no reason for people to produce those small resistances within the organization. Like, the people that are corrupted by Fisk in the FBI are doing everything they can in small ways to stop other people from being corrupted by Fisk in the FBI, right? But because this is legitimate, there's no reason for people to, like, do that. Like, it's actual, he's just the mayor. Like, well, he's in charge. Like, what do you want to do, right? And so I think it's both, but then when it comes down to it, right, but that's all well and good. But when it comes down to the moment where he has to pull the trigger, it does come down to blackmail, right? He has Blake sit there and blackmail the city council into agreeing with this initiative. Like, for all of this bluster and, sense of legitimacy and it's clean money, all these things, that is all, it turns out, pure aesthetic, because at the very bottom of the thing, at the very heart of the thing, it's what it's always been, which is Fisk blackmailing people to get what he wants, and grifting people to get what he wants, and scaring people to get what he wants, Which,
I love how everyone has something that to use against them as well. Like, the people standing up against Fisk's evil are, like cheating on their spouse or have like laundering money or something. Like, everyone has something that you can use against them. Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of realistic.
Yeah,
and I'd forgot the lady at the party. Like, Fisk had her husband kidnapped. So he is still doing that same type of blackmailing.
Sure,
I guess it's just maybe it's not as much, or
it's just different. Like, it's like, he's not blackmailing people to do crimes. He's blackmailing them to do official things, right? Like, that's kind of the difference, or things that are technically above board, as opposed to previously where he might blackmail someone into killing someone or, doing some crime.
My memory of the when Nadeem first had his sit-down meeting with all of the feds that Fisk owned, like, I think that was the first thing that Headley said to him was, like, Fisk owns everyone at this table. So, like, assumedly, he was blackmailing everyone there in a different way. Anyway, total tangent.
No, I think it's really key to this episode, so it's worth exploring. I guess I was just curious, because I think Sheila is our point of view character within Fisk's office in some way. Yeah.
Okay, I have to tell my tangent story really quick.
Okay.
Out of nowhere, in Alabama, hopping down one of our like major highways, Kangaroo, and it was like all over the news, and like they had to shut down like the interstate, and like the cops were out, animal control, and like all this stuff, and eventually they caught Sheila, which was the name of the roo, and the owner's name, it was like a private owner that owned this kangaroo, and the owner's name was Patrick Star.
Weird. That's wild.
The character from SpongeBob. Yes.
I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at this kangaroo hopping down the interstate. This is bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay.
So every time that you said Sheila, I'm like, oh, don't laugh, don't laugh.
The self-control, Darth. Well done. That's funny.
On a related note, I ordered some Patrick style pants so I
Did
can
you?
fully
Oh.
lean into the Patrick character.
That's good. I like that. You're gonna what's Patrick Swayze shirt maybe?
Yeah, I guess I can't can't go shirtless.
Yeah, you could go.
Unless it's like a non-professional setting. Yeah.
I'm just thinking like you could sort of layer the Patricks. Do you know what I mean? Get a Patrick Dempsey hat.
That's true.
Like you got options.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a McDreamy hat. It's just a hat, but it's just got his face on it. That's like a good look. People will be like, "Wow, your hat's so handsome." I think.
I dig it.
So we're gonna get Pat for Christmas this year. Pat, why do you own several hats of Patrick Dempsey's face? I have a friend who keeps doing this to me. I don't know why he won't stop. Anyway, okay, so the next thing I have is Frank and then the big fight. Do you guys have anything else before Frank?
Does Gallo get his head smashed in before this?
That happens a bit later.
That's my question.
Okay, never mind.
That happens concurrent to Frank fighting his way into the Red Hook compound.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
I did have one. I had a big issue with how Fisk handled that whole thing, and I guess what they were going with is that like when Fisk and Vanessa sat down to dinner after she shot Adam, and then they like sat down and they had this happy dinner, and like that was supposed to be the beginning of their true villain arc. Is that what we're supposed to take from it? Because I feel like the older Fisk, like jump back a couple seasons or whatever, and like if Matt jumps in front of him and saves his life, I feel like that version of Fisk would have sat there and told himself, you are not a villain, you are not your father, you are not the bad guy, and he would have like upgraded his room and gotten him a private nurse and like done the stuff, and you know, like he would have felt that he owed him even though they were enemies. But this Fisk immediately was like, this is a good opportunity to have him killed. Like there was no thankfulness. There was no my enemy might not be my enemy, you know? And I wish that they had delved into that more.
I mean, they're mortal enemies at this point. I think it's like he sees Daredevil as a threat. Daredevil represents everything. Like, because Matt Murdock, this is the thing about Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock knows that everything Fisk is saying is bullshit. Like, he's the one person who always has Fisk's number. He's a vigilante who's doing it for the right reasons. Asterisk, sometimes. And I think he's too big of a threat to even consider as an ally. I don't know. I think it would have been interesting to have that conversation with Vanessa and have him be, like, uncertain about his feelings toward Matt. I agree with you, like, that would have been interesting. But I don't see a world where he's even capable of entertaining empathy for Matt. You know, maybe maybe the version of it that you could get is, like, he gets kind of excited that Matt almost died for him. And, like, maybe he's, like, you know, you could see some sort of, like, look at how much I've, like, dug into him. You know, you could imagine a bit of a villain speech around, like, you know, I've even convinced him that, like, saving me is worthwhile. Like, you know, there's some angles you could take there around him relishing in it rather than him being thankful. Yeah.
You know what would be cool if Fisk felt compelled to go visit Matt in the hospital to supposedly thank him for saving his life when really he's there to kill him.
Yeah.
That would have been fun.
Well, that we get that in season 2 when the Punisher goes to the hospital. And it goes from like, Frank is just like going to say hi to like, oh, Frank is shooting up the hospital in like 5 seconds flat. Yeah. I don't disagree, Darth. I think that this show also, this episode in particular, moves at a brisk clip, right? There's not a lot of lingering. We talked about that a lot in this show, where I think in some of these episodes we would have liked to see about 20 minutes more television with just a lot more conversations. My feeling is that a conversation like that, or a moment like that for Fisk, is the kind of thing that this TV show cuts, even if it is something they thought about, you know?
Yeah, and it wouldn't have taken much. It even could have just been a slight pause, and you know, Fisk is like, he saved Vanessa's life 5 times when what's his face was trying to kill her, and now he's saved my life, but I cannot abide by him living. I do not wish this, but give him a quick death. You know, and that would have been like, I'm fine with that. You know.
Is it
because
just
like the whole point of why he's interesting is because he's conflicted, and once he becomes pure evil, that's way less interesting to me. So like I want to see that conflict in him.
What do you mean by like conflicted? Like, say more about that, because I don't necessarily agree with that after season 1.
Multiple times, I want to say even like when he had Adam chained up, like he would consistently go on these tirades about how I am not an evil person, and it's like I've made the comparison before that it's like Kylo Ren that is fighting against the dark side, and you always wonder if he may eventually end up choosing the light, and so like when you just have him do a pure villain thing like this without even acknowledging, oh, I could have, you know, it tugs at my heartstrings or something like that. I'm like, show me that inner conflict.
Gotcha.
So I could say, well, if this one fails, maybe next time he'll be like, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe he immediately regretted it. And he's like, I shouldn't have had you killed. You just saved my life. I really regret that action.
Right, but that's to what you said before, which is like that when Vanessa shoots Adam dead and they sit down to dinner, it's exactly what you said before. He's bored all the way in, right? Like that's the moment. Like that's the path of no return. That's effectively the moment after which he's willing to go mask off fascist. Like that's the line in the sand, I think.
It's kind of a double beat with the him realizing that he's the ill intent speech, you know. Yeah.
Interesting. I hadn't put that together. Yeah. Does that... I guess you kind of need that here, though, because it's like he's spent so much time trying to reform himself after whatever, they're getting shot in the face. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, okay, I guess, you know, if you were to make an argument for it, like, Fisk in season 1 just didn't really know or have an idea that about his true nature, that he thought he was the Good Samaritan, but he realized that he was the ill intent. Whereas in Born Again, he knows about his nature, but he is trying to reform himself, you know, to some degree, you know, but then I guess the conclusion he comes to is that, you know, reformation is for for the weak-willed or whatever. Like, you know, you don't need that if your ambitions are to be a kingpin.
I actually think it's probably to be a king, pin. I think it's probably good to bring up that monologue, because I do want to put that in conversation here with this Fisk that we have. So I'll give you this monologue. This is what happened. He's sitting in the he's been arrested finally at the end of the first season. He's sitting in the truck and he's talking to the prison, to the guards, and one of the guards is actually one of his men, but he's sitting there and he goes, I was thinking about a story from the Bible. I'm not a religious man, but I've read bits and pieces over the years. Curiosity more than faith. But this one story, there was a man. He was traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was set upon by men of ill intent. They stripped the traveler of his clothes. They beat him and they left him bleeding in the dirt. And a priest happened by, saw the traveler. But he moved to the other side of the road and continued on. and then a Levite, a religious functionary. He came to the place and saw the dying traveler. But he too moved to the other side of the road, passed him by. But then came a man from Samaria, a Samaritan, a good man. He saw the traveler bleeding in the dirt, and he stopped to aid him without thinking of the circumstance or the difficulty it might bring him. The Samaritan tended the traveler's wounds, applying oil and wine. And he carried him to an inn, gave him all the money he had for the owner to take care of the traveler. As the Samaritan, he continued on his journey. He did this simply because the traveler was his neighbor. He loved his city and all the people in it. I always thought that I was the Samaritan in that story. It's funny, isn't it? How even the best of men can be deceived by their true nature. It means that I am not the Samaritan, that I am not the priest or the Levite, that I am the ill intent who set upon the traveler on a road that he should not have been on. Oh.
I love that last bit, that he should not have been on. It's such like a conceited ideology.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. And I love this, like, and the true nature is there, right? And that's been a big part of this season, is people resisting their true nature. And this is Fisk completely giving himself over, perhaps for the first time in his life, completely giving himself over to his true nature. You know, we've seen glimpses of it previously. You know, he slams that Russian
when he
dude's,
was a boy.
When I was a boy. You know, he fucking slams the Yusuf's head off in a car door. You know, we see him do plenty of violence across the length of the show. But this is maybe the first time where he is just giving over to his true nature, right? He and Vanessa are just leaning in. They're in their, like, villain glow-up era. And there is just no way back for him, right? He's realized he's the ill intent, and he's finally giving himself over to that entirely. Whereas previously to what you said before, Darth, he's always held something back. There's always been some element of him that he's like, no, like, I'm still capable of good, or I'm still capable of moral complexity. This is now I'm fully crossed over. You know, I'm just giving in to my true nature.
I wonder if any of that is supposed to tie in with Vanessa's arc, that as she becomes darker and darker, it lets him see that he doesn't have to keep fighting for the light because he found someone that he can be evil with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, perhaps before he was, you know, even if it wasn't like a sincere motivation, he was, you know, affecting like some sort of like conflict, like internal conflict of like, oh, I'm not like truly evil and I want to be good for Vanessa, but like once he finds out that Vanessa is like fully on board with him, he's like, he doesn't have the need to, you know, have that struggle anymore.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Yeah, it's the last thing you just said. It's that he doesn't feel the need to have that struggle anymore. Like, it's not necessarily that he had the struggle, but he felt the need to, and so he produced it, right? Yeah, exactly. Interesting. I hadn't really thought too much about the fact that Fisk just fully crosses that line. But it is Vanessa, like, and I think it's maybe also learning. Maybe this is the moment. It's learning that Vanessa had Foggy Nelson killed. Maybe that's the moment when he relinquishes and goes, "Oh, I didn't realize how evil you were. Why am I even pretending to be good?"
He says to her, "I wasn't familiar with your game.
I didn't know you had it like that. I didn't know you could ball like that. You've been hiding that shit the whole time?" Like, it's the Russell Westbrook on a farm theory. Do you know this? So Russell Westbrook, one of the great NBA players, there's this conceit, I can't remember who it comes from, that you know, what if instead of, you know, growing up and becoming like an NBA phenom, like what if he grew up on a farm and all he knew was like doing farm work and like tending to crops and stuff like that, and then one day, you know, he's walking through town and he sees some kids playing b-ball and he, you know, starts dribbling and like he suddenly realizes he has this natural talent for it. And then, you know, at the age of like 23 or whatever, he starts to play basketball and he gets into the NBA and he becomes like world famous. but it's this complete different story because he didn't grow up in basketball and he has this like completely different background. And the theory is that like the narrativization of like prodigies, the myth will always get printed over the truth. And so I think it's a similar kind of thing for Vanessa, where Fisk has kind of mythologized in some ways this woman and his relationship with her, or parabolized because he's a bit more of a religious guy. In some ways, he has sort of papered over the actual truth of who she is with the truth of who he thinks she is or wishes her to be or wishes that he could be with her. And this is the moment of like, no, like he didn't grow up on a farm. Actually, he grew up in the NBA, and that's not what at all happened and isn't at all what's been happening. It's a very similar moment to me, of like Fisk realizing, oh, the woman I saw in my like dungeon who ordered the death of Rey Nadim, that wasn't like a one-off. She wasn't corrupted by me. She might have always had this in her. This might have been her true nature. And so why don't I give over to my true nature because of what Darth said, which is she'll love me anyway. You know, we can be weird fascists together. You know, terrible chemistry together.
And like if two people have that like kind of same goal and same realization, and then, you know, there's this entropy that like feeds off each other, and they both sort of make themselves believe that, you know, being like top of the world is their raison d'etre or whatever. Like, you know, that's a very conceivable idea.
Yeah, and it's especially if you think about the way this always plays out with fascism, which is at a certain point, someone turns on the other. You know, the people at the top turn on each other until there's only one person on top, because you just can't help it. The machine has to eat itself. It has to consume itself. So I'm curious if that ends up being where they go, right? Like, is this going to be a situation where Fisk and Vanessa eventually find themselves at odds, or, you know, Fisk crosses a line that Vanessa won't cross, or vice versa, and that produces a rift between them, or something. Yeah, I'm curious what they do with that.
It'd be really interesting to examine their relationship over the course of the entire series, because like in the first season / maybe into the second one, like everything that Fisk does is seen through the eyes of trying to impress Vanessa. And like that's why he beats in that one dude's head, was because he embarrassed Fisk in front of Vanessa. Like a lot of the violence that we see is directly related to him trying to woo Vanessa. And then everything in either season 2 or 3 is him trying to protect Vanessa and to get her back because she is overseas, and he needs to gain enough power in order to let her come back because he wants them to be together again. So at some point, it stops being everything is about her. Like his entire raison d'etre is about Vanessa, but not anymore. Like when did that change? What caused that change? And because it feels like now they have the same goal, but I don't know when that shift happened.
I mean, we pretty definitively do, right? It's when he gets shot in the head and goes away for like 3 years or 4 years or whatever. Like, you know what I mean?
Does some soul searching.
Yeah. Like that to me is the pretty obvious point where that changes. She's like, you left. Like,
but that also, well, yeah, but from his perspective, why? I mean, I guess almost dying could like totally reshape your world point of view. But like, why does that instance of him being away from her for this extended period of time, why does it suddenly change so that he's like everything he does is no longer about her? Because before it was. I could definitely see the argument that that's when it changes for her. But why for him?
Darth has never been in a toxic relationship before. Basically, until you get distance from that person, it's like impossible for you to see that, like, it's bad for you. You have to have that distance. You have to have that like no contact, and that is it helps eventually produce perspective with time. Like legitimately, I think that is what's happened. Is Fisk has been like done a bunch of soul searching and been like, I might have maybe done all of these terrible things for this woman. Maybe that's not good. And maybe that's a bad thing that I've done all of these terrible things. And maybe I need to become the good face of this, and I need to become the good one. I need to become legitimate, you know? Yeah. That is my base psychological take anyway from experience. I legit think it is just like, yeah, it's toxic relationship. They've pushed each other to do bad things. And it's the first time since he's met her where he's had space from her, where he isn't preoccupied with what you said, which was protecting her. You know, he's not built his life around her in that 3 or 4 years. He's taking space from her in that 3 or 4 years. And that's what lets him, or however long it is, that's what lets him come to a more rounded realization. Or at least produce the aesthetic of a more rounded realization anyway. All right, let's talk about the Frank scene, and then we might take a quick break to then sort of talk about the conclusion of the episode. So, Frank's back. Matt goes to his apartment, and Frank is in the kitchen. He's dressed like classic Punisher. He has on the vest and the trench coat. He's looking dripped out. He's got a fresh fade. He shaved. My boy's looking clean and mean. You know what I mean? Bernthal here.
He wanted to look good for Matt.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Matt's like, did you do that for me?
Yeah. Man, it's a funny... I forget how funny these guys are. Frank's opening salvo is, you know, you're a wall-to-wall asshole. Which is... And he's like, you know, you got nothing, come make a goddamn pot of coffee. When the power's out. Which is such a funny thing to say, because, like, well, who could? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, doesn't Matt retort, like, with that? Like, not everyone lives in a fallout shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Frank claps back with, is that a new costume? What do they call you now? Nightgown man?
Everything about their conversation hits for me. I think it's really good.
It's funny, man. Yeah. This is the Frank and Matt vibe I was looking for in that first scene where we had them together, and I'm glad that we had that first scene that felt wrong so we could have this scene that feels right.
Yes, I agree.
Because he's been sent there to help Matt, and so there's a bit of parity between them, or there's a bit of, you know what I mean? It's doing something different. Yeah.
I'm curious if this upcoming fight like felt contrived at all to you guys.
Say more about why, like, what do you mean by contrived?
So why are Matt and Frank there? Like, they know that the guys are coming after them, so I guess they pick a battleground, and that's where they decided to fight. But they didn't have to fight. They could have just gone out the window and been gone. But it was like, we gotta have the big fight scene, so that's why this is happening. And we've already got this location, so we're not gonna build another set, so let's do it in Matt's apartment for some reason. So he's gonna walk all the way back from the hospital with a hole in his chest and his butt hanging out of his nightgown, and no one's gonna stop him. No one's gonna help him.
Wow. They're gonna pursue Matt no matter where he goes. May as well, like, just get it over and done with, I suppose, is maybe the logic going through Matt's head. You know, he if he knows that the squad is gonna show up at his house, then, you know, may as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's where his armor is, right? Like, I don't think that's a crazy... like, he needs the armor, so he's gonna go home. I don't know that there's much more to it.
I also had the thought about is this where Heather always is, or is he always at her place? I mean, obviously he would have known if she were there or not.
She's always at his.
But yeah, like the idea of like her being involved, and like he never said, oh, she's not here or anything like that. That made me think, oh, he's already thinking about her, you know, worried about her safety or whatever. So that bad tension between them from earlier is like still existing in the fact that he doesn't even acknowledge her safety. Like there's all this rioting going on and he's not like, wonder if she's okay.
Hey, babe, can I have some friends over?
I'm having the fellas around. She's like, you said
don't come home for a while.
Yeah.
you said Thursday night was date night, babe. Like, but the fellas, the football's on. I gotta watch it with the boys.
State of emergency.
It's a state of emergency, babe. The Pats are in the playoff. Yeah, it didn't feel like it felt artificial more than it felt contrived, but it's an artificial moment because it's been produced by Fisk, so it didn't bother me. Like, I don't know, I was fine with it. The only thing that did feel contrived was the fact that North was there. That to me, I was like, okay, that's a little bit on the nose, where they sort of then confront him about the fact that he killed Hector. That to me was a little bit too clicky. Yeah, but I get it. They had to separate North and Powell so that they could both have a character beat with Frank. I get it.
And I mean, it's like entirely contrived, but like, you know, it was a bit goofy how Matt's, you know, he doesn't want the Punisher to kill people, and then he's there killing people, and Matt's like, no, stop, don't do it. Just like the most lazy attempt at trying not to get Frank to kill these people.
After kill number 12, he's like, no, Frank.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Talk to me about the fight, Darth, because you're our fight guy. It's like a fight in the dark. You know, there's flashlights going off. Matt's using his billy club, beating people up. Frank is doing like, he's on John Wick today. He's just shooting people, doing gun fu. Yeah. What do you think of the fight? Obviously a lot of cuts and stuff, but yeah, what's your take on this little action sequence?
Their interactions, I remembered being something that I really loved. How their choreography worked together, so that Matt was trying to save as many people as he could, and then like he'd do all of this stuff to save one guy from like a knife that Frank threw or something, and then Frank would just like pull out a gun and shoot the guy, something like that, where it was like it was all this epic stuff to save someone, and then boom, it didn't matter. And then like you said, the constantly like, stop it, Frank, and then and the whole time I'm sitting here as an audience member just like, let Frank do his thing, they need to go.
Yeah, this might be contentious. I think it's probably fine to kill the fascists. If they're it's self-defense. Also, it might be okay to kill fascists, but I think that on the press junkets and stuff, which I largely avoided, one of the headlines that kept coming up was like, Matt, Charlie Cox and Bernthal being like, man, the action in this season is like more brutal. You know, it's brutal, it's gnarly, much more so than Netflix, which is definitely true. It's pretty violent. This episode in particular is very violent. And I like that even Matt beating people up now feels like he's actually doing permanent damage. Like, he's not really, you know, pulling a punch. He's just like, everything is like brute force. He does like one flip at the end, and it looks like he nearly passes out after he does it. You know, it's got a bit of that old school Daredevil, like you throw a punch and then you keep stumbling and almost fall over because you're so injured and tired. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I like that they blow up Matt's apartment. Like his life that he's built over the last year is just gone by the end of this episode. He does a little he does the Spider-Man thing of like they jump out the window and then he uses his billy club to like help them descend, and then they just like smash into the top of like the car that the cop was in.
I like we said this before, but like the use of, there's making like a real use of the billy club this season. It's quite interesting.
Very different than what we've seen previously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a good time. I don't think it's as good as the little moment later that Frank has where he basically like walks into a room full of like 20 goons and kills like almost all of them until he gets captured. Like, I think that to me was a lot more coherent. only because there's less actors in that scene and it's one protagonist. You know, this is a bit like, even the second time I watched this, I felt it was a little bit unclear exactly what was happening. But to me, that's fine in this scene because it's more about like the emotional beats and the like. There's like a rhythm to it where it's like, you know, hit, pause, hit, pause, and you're sort of doing that again and again, and then you get to the end of the sequence. There's a rhythm to it that carries you through, even if you don't know exactly what's happening.
I love like Frank's movements of dispatching people, how he's like it kind of looks a bit lazy, like in that first guy he shoots at Matt's apartment. He like doesn't even bother like lifting the shotgun like all the way up. He just like kind of lazily lifts it point blank and just like makes a hole through this guy. It's like it's like these guys aren't even worth his full effort and attention kind of thing. Like
I don't remember if they actually do any of the goons at this point go, "Oh my gosh, it's Frank Castle."
No,
not in Matt's apartment.
Not in Matt's apartment.
Okay, I didn't think so, and I thought that was a real missed opportunity because there should have been at least one of them that like literally like throws up his gun and was like, "It's you," and then he just gets blasted in the face. Like that should have happened with one of them.
Listen, you got to keep Frank sympathetic, man. I don't know what to tell you. If he shoots an unarmed man, he does do that later.
Yeah, like all the time.
Yeah, that's just a Tuesday for Frank. I kind of wish. I mean, maybe you have North do that, because like, but then you would rob Powell of the moment later where Powell gets to give his like little villain speech to Frank. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I suppose that you would. That's something that's very similar happens in the end credits, with Frank, or like with a seemingly like unarmed situation turning into Frank like coldly, mercilessly dispatching that guy who just had no intention of harming Frank, kind of thing.
Yeah,
maybe it would have been like a double beat.
It's the same thing actually with that. With that kid, I wish there had been like a little, if they had like directed it where there was a little bit more fan worship than I perceived. It was more like this kid didn't even know who Castle was, and it would have played out the same way. It was just like, oh, this you're getting on top of his ego and you're getting him to shake your hand, and then like it's all over. So I like everything has been building up how much these guys worship Castle, and I wish they had played into it a little bit more aside from his like interrogation whatever scene later on.
Maybe you get more of that, like maybe that they keep going with that and they keep escalating that, and then Frank ends up in this all-out war against these fucking wannabes,
I kind of thought it was sufficiently done with his conversation with Powell. Like I thought that was pretty meaty enough of that topic of like, the fanboys meeting the real Punisher kind of thing. That satisfied that for me. Especially
with how truly wretched Powell has revealed himself to be. Like he's been awful this whole season, but he is truly irredeemable as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the issue I had with that was that yes, Powell is speaking for like all of the cops there, but he is the only one that we actually hear say, "You are our hero." So I was looking for some more like very verifiable reactions from other people that's like, "Oh my gosh, it's you."
I mean, there's 25 guys.
I like things overt.
There's 25 guys in Punisher vests, dude. I don't know how much more overt you can get. They've been holding up little flags that say, "I love Frank Castle."
Yes.
Christ. Okay, that's a good place to take a...
Just to be clear. We love Frank.
They're chanting in the background. Frank Castle, Frank Castle. They're doing a little dance that they've choreographed. We love Frank. We love, like
The Punisher dance.
the Punisher dance. They're doing maracas, but the maracas are like skull shaped. You got options. All right, let's take a quick break there before we pitch anything worse. Gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk about Karen's return, and then the crescendo of the episode. So we'll be back presently. All right, we're back, and so is Karen. I called it, you guys. I don't know what to tell you. I was on fire last episode. I was like, wouldn't it be great if Karen came back in some type of way? Here she is in full effect. And she takes the boys back to Frank's compound. And Karen and Matt, so I'm curious, Patrick, for you, what you make of the vibe between Karen and Matt, especially as we get toward the end of this episode. But, they're sort of dancing around each other a little bit. There's obviously a lot of warmth there. But yeah, I'm curious if you read, some of that romantic chemistry returning. What's your vibe on these two characters again, as they sort of meet each other again for the first time in, a year and change?
I actually didn't think there was any sort of romance going on. I thought their reunion was much more platonic and wholesome.
Yeah,
that's how I read it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I could see them. The only reason why my writing brain went, maybe you could do something romantic here, is they do have a little exchange later where he's like, so you've been talking to Frank, huh? And then, he's like, I heard your heartbeat when you saw him or whatever. And she's like, and she goes, that's not fair. And then she says, oh, but did you listen to mine when I saw you? So I think there might still be something there. Because she says to Matt, like, oh, you sound jealous, right?
I remember I blanked at the start of that conversation, and then at the end I was like a bit confused.
Okay. I might explain it when we get there, but that's interesting. I was just curious because you have a much better read of these two characters.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of that flourishing again in next season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've only seen the first season of The Punisher, but I've always thought that, and this show seems to be clued in on that as well, that Karen and Frank have somewhat of a romantic chemistry going on as well.
Yeah. What ends up being interesting about The Punisher is that chemistry ends up going nowhere. And then in the second season, he ends up in like a weird romance with it's not FBI. I think it's the CIA operative who got burned by the agency. He ends up in with a weird romantic chemistry with that dude's wife. Because he gets burned by the CIA and they think he's died. And then Frank and his wife end up with this weird chemistry that very nearly becomes something. I think I
remember that from the first season.
Yeah. That keeps evolving in the second season in a way that is very strange. I guess we'll see. The other thing structurally that made me think that maybe that was the maneuver is you kind of get Matt's previous life being exploded, literally, and his relationship with Heather pretty much coming undone as she signs up with Fisk. It doesn't seem like there's a future there, but it seems like there's a future here. So I could kind of see them going that direction as well. And I think I'd be really interested to see what they do with that, because it seems pretty clear from the way that Frank and Karen leave their exchange that you know, he doesn't have any intention of seeing her again. Is sort of the vibe I got. You know, she's leaving. He's, you know,
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not buying it that you don't care. And he's like, look, you asked me to do a favor and I did. She says, thank you. Yeah.
That was a pretty cold goodbye.
Yeah.
From Frank.
Which makes me think that he saw how she and Matt looked at each other, and then he was like, well, like, there's no point in me even, like, it's just done, you know? The second they see each other, it's done for him, and any semblance of him and Karen, you know, that could be his perspective on that.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought about how interesting it is that the writers can't really have Frank fall in love, because then that puts like his major ghost to rest, which would majorly affect his raison d'etre. So like his entire character kind of rests on not falling in love again.
Yeah, you can't give the Punisher something to lose. It just like just goes against every fiber of his being, you know.
Yeah. And that's why I think in the show they end up having the romantic relationship be between like his old best friend and the cop who's like investigating all of this. Frank is a weird character in that you could give him something to lose, but it would have to be something really tragic. Like, you couldn't have him be in a relationship, but you could have him like adopt, like, you know, adopt some kid who has some like terrible backstory, and Frank is like taking care of them or whatever. But then that would end tragically, you know, like there's no happily ever after for Frank Castle.
That did happen in a sense. He adopted the pit bull that I don't remember what season or whatever that was, and then the bad guys ended up just like shooting it to teach him a lesson.
Yeah, it's the end of season 1, because that's when he goes on his rampage with a shotgun and he kills all of them. It's fucking gnarly.
You killed his dog?
It's me, Jonathan. Jonathan. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like you have to get for me, the only satisfying way to like give him more loss is to be creative about it, which is why I think I actually can't remember if in my season 4 perspective I brought in Punisher, but like if he survived the snap, that would be an interesting way to add some more loss to his life. Like, you know, like everyone in the world like goes away, like it's something that he didn't think he cared about, or like, but you know, once it happened, it's like it's devastating. I think that would be like an interesting angle.
That could be really interesting.
Like make him lose things that he didn't even realize he cared about, you know.
Yeah, that is probably the angle you'd have to go for, I feel. I did rewatch I did Infinity War on Friday night and Endgame last night, so they're very fresh in my head. Endgame is a long film. It's 3 fucking hours.
Yeah.
I put that shit on at 7 p.m. and I was like, it's finished. And I'm like, is it bedtime? Fucking hell. What's interesting, I think, about, and I can answer that you didn't have the Punisher in your season 4. But I think you're right. That is a vector you could take him down if you wanted to have him be really compelling in the next season, is like maybe in this martial law thing that's happened, maybe the thing he loses is complete control over the Punisher as an idea, right? Like, you already kind of see him like hate these fanboys, but maybe everyone buys, maybe they just lie, right? Like Powell just lies and he says like, nah, Frank Castle fully, you know, he gave us his blessing. We're working with him all the time. Like, he's one of us, you know, like they could just, you could imagine that becoming the thing he's lost, is like control over his legacy or control over his image or something like that.
And his arc is like kind of similar to Matt Reeves' Batman, where he realizes that being a symbol of fear isn't quite enough to get the job done. You need to inspire a bit of hope and stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then he wears a white version of his outfit with a black skull. And he becomes the Redeemer.
The Reformer.
The Reformer. Yeah, let me in, Disney. Give me the job, I'll do. Scarlet Pain can't do it like I can. Oh, man.
He becomes a corrections officer.
Jesus. That would be a fucking... that would be a twist. Becomes a prison, like, counselor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I wanted to get your sense on that, so that makes sense. Darth, I'm assuming you didn't think about it. The Karen Matt romance. You assuming it didn't even cross the brain pan.
I could see it maybe developing in the future, but like I had stated before, like they're friends. I don't have to have anything beyond that. And it seemed very much like they were just in the this is not really the best comparison, but I loved this this quote that Pam and Jim from The Office, like the actual actors, they were talking about that relationship, and they were like, the part of me as an actor that is Jim will always be in love with Pam, and the part of her, Jenna Fisher, the part of her that is Pam will always be in love with the part of him that is Jim. And like I could see that being the same with these, like Matt and Karen will always be in love, but it's those past versions of themselves that they're still in love with, and so that doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be any future relationship.
That is very well said.
Yeah, I vibe with that.
Yeah, I still want to see them together, obviously, but I think that is that is correct. I think that is like
he's like, I still want to see them get it on. But...
Yeah, but what you're saying is correct. Yes, I understand that. Because as you say that, I was thinking about a previous relationship I had, and I'm like, oh, that's absolutely true. Like, exactly what you just described is exactly the relationship that we have now, where it's like you're always going to be in love with that version of that person, and they're always going to be in love with that version of you. You're just not those people anymore because time. People change and evolve. And yeah, that's just the only constant is change. But yeah, make him kiss. I don't know. What are we doing? Put the dolls together and make them kiss, guys. Come on. So Fisk initiates his Safer Streets initiative. And he does this like with the bit at the start. He makes Blake play this little fascist game where he gets all the city council members together, and Blake is sort of, as they disapprove, he's writing their names down, and then, he and Buck are basically threatening them and blackmailing them into agreeing with the initiative. And Blake gives this, like, shit-eating, self-satisfied grin. And that was when I knew that he wasn't going to get punched this episode. And I was devastated. Nobody slapped this man. Nobody punched this man. Justice for New York City. We need a citizen to slap Blake. Daniel Blake, please. Thank you. Yeah. It's what do you guys make of this moment? Aside from just being incredibly prescient, how do you guys feel about where Daniel Blake has ended up as a character, this being his last little crescendo moment of characterization?
I loved it.
I mean, it's interesting, like, just as a concept of a character, like, because is the point of him throughout the show is like will he devolve into a little fascist prick, or is it setting up for him to go through that pipeline only to come to, like a watershed moment where he does something heroic and rejects that and stands up to it? But instead you just get this storyline of like a kid whose dream is to, like, just be high up in like a authoritarian fascistic administration, and like get like power for himself, but like he's it's like a political ideology that he's like genuinely like really passionate about, like as if he is some sort of like moral activist or something. Like, I don't know. This
Yeah.
character just ended up being quite weird, but I don't know if it's realistic, but it's like nuanced enough that it kind of feels like it might be.
You've clearly never spoken to a young lib, have you?
No.
Daniel Blake is every young lib ever. They love
Yeah.
it's these like 21-year-old kids. They love dressing up in suits. They love talking about how valorous the military is. They love being on the inside of institutions, and they love gaining power. But this is the thing about like conservative ideology, is there is no actual thing at the heart of it, right? You keep digging enough down and you get to like, I just want to get mine and fuck everybody else. Like there's no actual core like ideological outcome. And that's why Blake feels so vacant in his ideology, is that he's just saying the quiet parts out loud because he's so young that he doesn't realize that you're not supposed to do that. At no point does Buck say, I do this because I love money and power. But like, it's pretty obvious why he's doing what he's doing. Blake just hasn't learned the maneuvers and the layering and the literal masking that someone like Fisk is able to do. And he doesn't need to, because he's been brought into the inside of this institution that Fisk is building that is technically, technically official. But I think that'll be Blake's undoing. Blake might ultimately be the one responsible for toppling Fisk's, dictatorship, because he's the guy that says the quiet part out loud because he doesn't know any better, right? When he threatens BB, he goes about 5 steps over the line too far, and that's what gives her the juice she needs to realize, like, oh, I need to stay close to this guy. I need to hit up Gallo. I need to start building some alliances here. He leaks the story to BB about Red Hook. Like, I think it's he's a liability because he's too bought in, and he hasn't learned that if you're that actively bought in and that actively plucky about, the beginnings of fascism, then people are going to know that something's up. That's my reading on his character anyway.
Yeah, like he's so earnest about his behavior that like, it's like he genuinely thinks those are like virtues kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
becoming powerful in these institutions are like, that's the thing to do in the game of life kind of thing. I guess probably how he sees it.
Yeah, and he doesn't know, or he has not, no one's told him, hey, you have to pretend that it's a means to an end. You have to be like, no, well, like, I want the power so that I can do da-da-da-da-da for the city. He just says, no, I want the power because the power's good. It's that fucking quote again. That's why they call it money, right? Like, it's money, that's why they call it money, right? So consumed by the thing itself that you fail to see that the thing itself is produced by ideology. Yeah. And I don't know, like, he's just a great like character you love to hate. I've really delighted in how they walk up to the line of making him irredeemable, and then they keep doing these little things, like when he apologizes to BB, and it's clear that she's letting him apologize, and you don't know if he's sincere in that apology or not. I like the way that they've complicated him, and what you said last time, Pat, around like he's not the typical like chauvinist pig, who wants to control women. Like there's a lot of nuance to him that he feels like a real guy who would absolutely be running like the Young Lib Society at his university. They're all just doing like fascist cosplay.
He's a young Tony Abbott without the chauvinism.
Yeah, and without God, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I suppose for the Americans and for Darth, our Liberal Party is actually our Conservative Party, because they learned from Hitler that if you call yourself socialists, people will maybe think that you're socialists, even when you're not and you're fucking Nazis. But the Young Libs is like I'm sure you guys have it in America, which is like, 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old kids, usually straight white males, of course, who, grow up and go to private schools and, are usually raised by rich parents. And they're just fully bought into like supporting and cosplaying as, people that are politically active for the Conservative Party, pretending and participating in all the culture war stuff. I'm sure you have similar types of people, but it's a real known quantity here.
Ironically, it's very opposite, like definitionally, because like liberal is the opposite of conservative.
Yeah, that's the trick. That's the maneuver, right?
But it's actually just that straightforward over here.
Yes,
is what I'm saying.
I know, I understand. It's yeah. But yeah, that's just that is to me who Blake is. And he's just I like him on stage with Buck as well, because Buck feels like the real deal, and then it makes Blake feel like he's cosplaying even when he does land serious moments. It's like, but the guy who can actually dunk is standing next to you, and you keep saying that you can ball, and I haven't seen you on the court one time, dude.
That's such a good like dynamic. Like Buck is so effortlessly, this exact kind of person that this like administration or this regime needs. And yeah, like as you say, like Blake next to him is like just like highlights how, I don't know, just how like inept he is at like what, and compared to like how good he thinks he is.
Yeah, it's that quote. I don't know where it's from. So you guys might recognize it. I don't know, but it's like it's someone saying like, I love standing next to you because you make me look so tall or so big or something. It's like a character saying that to like a bad guy or a villain, and I have no idea where it's from, but it's in my head. I could not tell you. I don't know. Anyway, if someone knows, sound off in the comments. It's from a famous movie or TV show or something. I just couldn't tell you for the life of me. Next thing I have is Matt and Karen going to the lockup, where they are sort of going through, and that's where Matt asks about Frank, and they have that little moment. And so the sequence here is they're going through the files, and Matt's like, "Oh, so you've been like, you've been talking to Frank, huh?" And Karen's like, "Yeah, like, and he's, "Oh, I heard your heartbeats when you came in." She goes, "Did you hear his?" And he says, "Yeah. It's both of you." And then there's a pause. And she goes, "That's not fair, And there's another pause, and she goes, "Well, what about mine?" And he says, "Yeah." And he sort of he says nothing, but Karen does this little facial expression of like, it's clear that her heart is racing in that moment, and he can hear it. And my reading on that is like that was where the chemistry was, because then they sort of go, they're looking through the box, and then and then there is just a really genuinely sweet like moment of like they just hold hands, and he says like, "I'm glad you're back." And it's after he explains the avocados at law bit. And she's like, "I never understood that."
I love that throwback.
It's so good. Yeah, it's just really sweet, and the joy of these two characters being relieved and enjoying each other's company, whether you read it as romantic or platonic, it is such a relief from the fraughtness and the tension that we've had with Matt and Heather for like the last 4 episodes. Like it does a great tonal maneuver of making you go like, okay, the world might be ending, but also maybe this is better. Like maybe this is good. Maybe this is what we've needed the whole time. Maybe like this, the absence of this is part of the problem. Yeah, I think it's really, really clever to have had the restraint to not bring Karen in until this episode. As you can imagine, Netflix is
I was just thinking. I was thinking how appropriate it would have been when Matt woke up and he said Karen's name, and the whole purpose of that was to, have the tension with Heather. But I think he could have just as easily woken up and said, "Foggy? Karen?" Because like he immediately is going back to the happy point in his life. And it's not that Karen, it's not that Heather is feeling jealous of another woman. It's that Heather is realizing that Matt is so living in the past that he doesn't even think about her, upon waking up and all that.
Yeah. I think that gives you less room to play later on with the romance as the focus, though. But I mean, I guess it depends what type of story that they're going to want to go on to tell, right? Yeah. But it's just a great moment. And this is where I've written down, like, oh my god, my joke about international waters turns out to be true. So they learn that, it's a freeport, like we said. And I have in all caps, man, the parallels to real life couldn't be more damning. Trump wishes he had an ounce of Fisk's ambition and intelligence. This is like such a complete fascist project. It's really impressive. And yeah, as Pat said, this ties the show together. Foggy was killed by Dex because Vanessa is using this freeport for all of her crimes, and she needs to prevent this from coming out. And you can start to see how this all becomes causal in retrospect, right? If Foggy isn't killed, Matt doesn't hang up the armor. If Matt doesn't hang up the armor, then the White Tiger doesn't have to be so public. And if Hector isn't out there doing crime, all this, etc., you can start to see the dominoes of everything becoming causal sort of fit into place. Especially on a rewatch, it really felt like, with the knowledge of where it's going, it really felt like a jigsaw puzzle coming together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great little tying together. And then there's two things left, right? There's Frank going to face down the boys.
The
Darth,
commissioner.
oh, brother, yeah. So Frank goes to see the fellas, and then by the fellas I mean the fanboys. And then we get Gallo being dimed out by Sheila, presumably. And then we'll talk about the very ending, which is the Matt and Karen stuff. Frank goes to face down the fanboys at Red Hook. He crushes it in this action scene. He is moving like a fucking man possessed. I love Bernthal's physicality as he like walks up the ramp, and someone puts a gun on him from behind, and he just snaps instantly. And then from there, he's just like lurching from. If you said before that like there was a laziness to his fighting, this is now he's on like tilt, and he's like. He is trying to kill these people, and he's trying to do the most amount of damage he can, and Bernthal really conveys that with his body language as he's just like, and he's like really like grunting as he's throwing himself at people and killing them and stabbing them and shooting them, and like, yeah, it's really full on.
I'm gonna go all Gen Z here, but he is aura farming in this scene, as they say.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I don't 100% know. I think it's just like doing something in a really cool way, like consistently.
And the term was what?
Like, like aura farming.
Fuck off.
Like, if you're on the court playing some b-ball and you just like, you snake through like three people and seemingly effortlessly, and you dunk. And you don't like trip at all, and you do everything smoothly. That's aura farming kind of thing.
In the zone. You're in the zone.
Yeah, in the zone. Yeah.
Christ. I'm
trying to reach a younger audience, David. You're welcome.
That's our issue. Yeah, our demographic issue is that we don't have any under 25s. Thank you for addressing that, Patrick. Really appreciate it. All of those 25-year-olds with expendable income to support us on Patreon, right?
Yes, those exist.
Those definitely exist.
So I ironically, I kind of, aside from like the action, like I love the like choreography, but I really did not like this scene because I could not figure out what Frank was trying to do, because he went in there unarmed. He has this whole arsenal of guns, right? And he just walks up there with nothing, like takes away the dude's pistol and takes someone else's knife. And like, he's stealing weapons off the bodies instead of going in like he intended to kill them all. So it's
that's
like,
the aura
did he
farming.
Go in? Huh?
That's the aura farming. He just didn't give a fuck. He just went in, no weapons. He just, that's the badassery of it.
Yeah, sometimes when you have the juice like that, you don't even need to think about it. You know what I mean? He's Jason Bourne from the first Jason Bourne, where he's like, "Fuck it, I'll kill you with a pencil. Like whatever. I'll kill you with a chair leg."
That I wondered if like the point was to like let himself get caught so that he could talk to them, but then that just seems silly too. So I was like, I did not like how they played that whole scene out, because he went everywhere else loaded up. So why would he walk into this group of like 30 guys barehanded? Like it just didn't.
I mean, he has a big
work
old
for me.
hunting knife. I don't know. I don't know why
You're not helping that.
I don't know why
Okay,
he does
he had a
this.
knife. Fine.
It's the statement. It's the disrespect. Like, you know, like he doesn't, like, these guys aren't worth like a carefully planned, you know, entrance and egress kind of thing. Like he doesn't give a fuck. He's just gonna march in there like these guys are nothing and just dispatch them.
Well, and he gets through
I could
most
definitely.
of them, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he still loses. So that like if that was his mindset, like he miscalculated.
Yeah, but he's a bit of a masochist, you know. Like I feel like he doesn't care if if he loses and gets tortured or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
he's like, as long as I
just
kill
like
a bunch
that's
of
just how he rolls.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I was gonna let it go because I liked the scene, but in the back of my head, I was like, why is this happening?
There's one point where like one of the women is like she like kicks him multiple times in the head, and he just punches her once and then like grabs her gun and just like jams it like into her throat and pulls the trigger. And I was like Jesus. Like this, they really go for it in this scene. Yeah, it's
and then like a couple guys, like he stabs his knife through them as he like sort of slices them out, like chunks of their like face and their flesh go flying out with it. Like really chunky fight scene.
Yeah. He's hitting hard, and he's hitting like every blow is lethal type of thing, right? Like he's not fucking around. And I love the way that he everything is like articulated with these like big guttural like grunts of effort. As opposed to previously where it was like sort of every fourth or fifth exchange in the apartment, you know, he's doing something strenuous. He's like, "Rah!" But here it's like everything is strenuous. Like every single beat is he's exerting effort for a killing blow, and he just carves through them. You know, there's maybe like 3 or 4 left when he gets captured, and then then he gets captured, and then we cut to Sheila kind of in the hallway, like crying, and then, you know, the realization that she might have dimed out Gallo. And as you already said, Pat, Gallo gets into a car with this dude that used to be a detective or something like that, and they drive him to Red Hook. And Fisk has Gallo in front of, like, the other NYPD leadership. How would you describe this kill exactly? You know?
Beautiful.
Watermelon.
the watermelon technique. Yeah.
Rubber bands around a watermelon.
We will not let anyone threaten our home.
Fisk stands behind Gallo, takes both of his hands, and just applies them to Gallo's head until there's like a point, and then it's like, and then like he bifurcates this dude's skull, but not cleanly. It's just like half of Gallo's face is hanging off as he falls forward. It's insane.
I'm pretty sure that it was his jaw that went this way and then like that. So it was his jaw that got ripped off of his head.
It's insane.
I was not expecting the gruesomeness, even with like the Frank stuff going on, and then like showing everything. I was just, I love a good death.
Imagine the conversation.
Reminds me of Omni-Man crushing the red guy's skull.
This has like the
Like anything in that series.
like every piece of violence in that series.
Yeah.
But it does make me wonder, like, what is that conversation with Scarter Payne and like the Disney exec when they're reviewing the dailies look like? Where they're like, oh, so like this is R-rated show. He's like, yeah. And then they're watching the scene, and the Disney exec is like, are we allowed to do this? Are we cool? It's, yeah, incredibly violent, and it's delightful, and it's so bold too. He just does it in front of the rest of the NYPD leadership like it's fucking nothing. It's great.
Can you just imagine the Disney exec that like looks over to the writers and is like, are you okay? Like,
yeah, you guys,
do you need help?
You good? You straight? Like, is this a cry for help?
I love the performance of it, of how after he crushes his head, his hands are soaked in blood. He gets out this little handkerchief and like wipes his forehead.
Yeah, he dabs away imagined blood with a hand that is soaked in blood. It's delightful. There you go, the watermelon. Add that to the Fisk arsenal. There's the car door. There's the watermelon. There's the hammer, obviously, the original
hammer.
The hammer.
Yeah. He loves bashing heads in, it seems, or crushing heads in some capacity.
The sort of the skull basher is like another technique where he just hits you with his fists like that until you die. That's a classic Fisk.
The chimpanzee kill.
The chimpanzee. That's exactly what it is. He just goes ape mode. We call that the Donkey Kong where I'm from.
See, when he was a boy, he watched too many zombie movies, so he knows he has to destroy the brain.
Yeah, that's right. When I was a boy, I played an arcade machine, and there was an ape.
There are several interesting things about Gallo that I couldn't figure out if this was just like the show was out of time, or if it was lazy writing, or if Gallo was just supposed to be portraying someone who thought he was safer than he really was. Because like when he gets into the car, his normal like driver is not there, and it's a guy wearing the tattoo of you know that those are like the secret SS police, and he's just like, okay, you could drive me wherever you want to, that's fine. And then he gets there and Fisk is there and all of Fisk's secret police are there, and Gallo is like, okay, I'll be here, this is fine, I'll be safe. You know, like no red flags whatsoever, even though he just talked about trying to get the mayor impeached or whatever with Sheila. So I'm assuming that they were trying to portray like he felt like he was that safe. But it also just felt a little bit weird to me that he wasn't worried at all until he started getting his head pulverized, you know?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty bold thing to do. Like, you know, you wouldn't immediately assume that's what would happen to you.
It's like inconceivable. Like he's the police commissioner of New York City. Like, yeah, it's like inconceivable that the mayor would kill him. Like,
yeah, like using his own police force as like, you know, as like to assist and stuff. Like, yeah,
and then doing it in front of Gallo's own police, like the boldness of it, the audacity. Like, I just don't think that someone like Gallo is capable of imagining something like that. Like, it's just, yeah.
Because he's probably still in the vein of like the cops are good people, and my dad was a cop and my uncle was a cop, and we do the right thing, much like what's his face spouted out, except maybe Gallo actually believes it and tries to live by it.
Yeah, because he makes a difference between himself and Powell in the previous episode, where he's like, you know, he tries to stop Powell from assaulting that journalist, right?
He didn't assault him, he deep fried him.
Yeah. He batted him. It's just like, it's, you know, but like, I think he doesn't see people like Powell as cops. He sees them as like, and like Fisk's entire secret police, like he sees them as something else apart from the police, in some way, you know.
So battery is an actual charge.
I know that was the joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
He batteried and fried him. There you go.
Going back to that scene, when they're at that dance and BB Urich comes up and talks to him, and I don't know that we ever talked about this, but she gives him a card that has her like secret email address on it, and that's one of the pseudonyms that she writes under. And I was expecting at this point they go through Homeboy's pockets and they find that card, and then that leads into them doing like framing BB later or getting her to say stuff or whatever, thinking it's coming from Gallo. Maybe they'll do that next season, but they didn't go anywhere with that yet. Like this would have been where they would have pulled it out of his pocket, you know?
I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes something that happens next season. You're right. I could imagine that being Buck's mission in some ways, or, you know, something. Or I guess you'd make Blake do that because he's technically in charge of communications, you know?
Yeah.
Actually, that would be really fraught.
That totally would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have him go off to BB.
He would probably call BB in to help. Like he would be like, "Hey, can you help me track down this reporter?"
Oh yeah, dude, that would be great. Ugh, the tension. Ugh. The vibes. Foul.
And she's like, "You want to go make out?"
Yeah. Let's go do shots and make out. Every man's kryptonite.
I was about to say that would totally work. I mean,
yeah.
For the two girls who are listening.
Listen, our audience is not. It's pretty diverse. Okay, is it 60% men? Yes. Is that a pretty good stat on YouTube? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
yeah.
For YouTube, it's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about Frank's exchange with Powell because I think this is like fucking incredible. We finally get Frank confronting Powell, who is kind of the head of these fucking fanboys. And Powell sort of gives Frank this pitch. He says, I lost a lot of guys because of you today.
I lost a lot of guys because of you today. And I'm hoping that this is fucking worth it. Listen, Frank, everything that you do, you know, you can do that with us. And you don't gotta run anymore. These guys fucking idolize you, man. They all do. It'd be an honor to serve with you, Frank.
You admire me, huh?
Yeah.
Hey. Hey. Hey, you're fucking mine, you know that? You're a bunch of clowns, you know that? You fucking clowns. Admire me. You think you know my pain? You think you know my loss? You admire me? What do you know about me? How I see the world? You know how I see the world? A bunch of clowns. I ain't gonna serve with you. I won't fucking piss on you if you were on fire. You got that?
Sorry to hear that, Frank.
Are you?
Yeah.
How about you? You sorry?
Bit of Schadenfreude. Nice to see, you know, even as they've got him tied up and they're beating him up, Frank is still in charge. They still have nothing on him. Like, it's a real declaration from Frank's perspective. And I think them beating him up only proves his point further, if you know what I mean.
And you had called that a long time ago, where you were like, I hope he meets those guys, and he's like, you're just clowns. You're pretend, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the natural thing to do? Because I remember when police in America started putting Punisher decals on their cars, and we all went, "Oh my god, that's so embarrassing! Like, that's so embarrassing. That's so pathetic." I remember it happening, and like, I know how this show thinks, and I know that, you know, Scotta Payne has a really precise view of the Punisher, which comes through in the TV show that he puts together for Marvel. And I just kind of sense that that's what you would do with this setup. And I'm really curious to see next season how that ends up evolving and becoming more and more dire and fraught. And how much complicity Frank ends up feeling for what these guys do, you know?
I know it's not in his character, but I really wish that he had just kind of like sucked up his own ego or whatever it is that drives him and been like, yes, I will work with you. Because like that's the exact opposite of what we would have expected, you know? And we haven't really seen Frank have like any character development really. And I think this would have been something really interesting where he's like, let me pretend to be one of them because I could actually do some good. I could get on the inside. I can take down more cops, more evil cops, maybe even go after Fisk himself if I take them up on this. We never really see him. He only is the brute force dude, even though we see him do some like secret agent type stuff just in how he moves around secretly, but we never see him like go undercover. And I think this kind of could have been a missed opportunity for him to play a different type of Punisher.
I mean, yeah, that would be the practical thing to do, would be to play along, but the potency of this scene is from the fact that he is completely at their mercy, and then he still chooses to admonish and belittle them, you know? Like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And it just makes them look so pathetic. Like, when they're taking turns punching him in the face, it's like, God, this is so embarrassing. Like, you're so small in comparison to Frank, you know?
Mm.
I also think it's important that the show has an opportunity here to have Frank fully condemn them. Like, I think the show also needs to make it really explicit. If this hadn't happened, I could imagine us having this conversation, but from the other perspective, Darth, where you're like, I don't understand why they didn't have Frank tell these guys that they're fucking losers. Like, how do we know what he thinks of them?
Maybe if he had said something along the lines of like, yes, definitely tell them off. Like that definitely has to be part of it. But then he could also be like, yeah, I'll join, but you're going to take those stupid skulls off of your shirts. You're going to do things my way. You're going to stop deep frying people's hands. You don't work for Fisk. You work for me. We're going after the actual bad guys. And then they're like, whoa, we want Punisher. We don't want what you're describing. We want what we think Punisher is.
Yeah, I could see that. I do land where Pat is, which is like, I think this is like brilliant, but I understand what you're saying. And look, there's still time for it to go that way in the next season, right? He could be like, I'll infiltrate them, I'll do this, I'll do that. But the lack of practicality here is peak Punisher. That's peak Frank Castle to me. And to let himself be beat up like this to prove a point is very, very Frank. Yeah, it's classic. And Bernthal does such a brilliant job with his facial tics in this scene. These guys aren't even worth a speech. Like, he's not even really stringing these sentences together. He's just kind of like saying the things that kind of spark into his brain. He's not even producing ideology here. You know what I mean? Like, they're not even...
Yeah, he's like... He's kind of half checked out. Like,
yeah. They're not really worth
his
his
attention. These guys are like just a nothing to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Fuck these guys, man. Fuck these fucking cops, man. Like, it just... The catharsis of that moment is excellent. Yeah, really, really satisfying.
So, like, concurrent with that, is that not where Matt and Karen are sneaking up?
So it's interesting. It is technically concurrent. You get a little bit of his dialogue in a cut, but then it's just them. So it's after he says, I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. You got that? Then it's just Matt and Karen. And we get that scene that sort of wraps up the episode, plot-wise.
Because that ended up being like an issue that I would have had. Because like when Matt was trying to like run down there and fight everyone by himself, and I'm like, you idiot, don't do it. And Karen was like, you idiot, don't do it. I'm like, yes, thank you for saying that. But the second he hears Frank being tortured and about to be killed, then he has to do it. He has to go and try to save this person, even if he's like a villain that is going to be killed. He's morally obligated. So I don't know. I wish they would have done it like 1 hour later or something, so it's super obvious. Because if Frank is there, then Matt has no excuse not to rush in like he always does.
I guess. I mean, it didn't even clock to me at all. Like, I think I didn't even think about that. I think I was so enamored with the way that interrogation ends, and then what Matt and Karen are saying to each other and how they say it. I wasn't even thinking about that, but I could see that.
It may be. I don't know that we've ever really talked about that. I might focus way more on like the superpowered aspect than you do, and so like the second that Daredevil like shows up anywhere, I'm like, what is he listening to? And so cutting right from Castle like yelling, and immediately cutting to Daredevil sneaking up on the side, that I'm like, oh, he hears that. Like that was my immediate natural reaction. And I'm sure I've had the other, in other scenes, like as soon as Daredevil appears on a roof or wherever, I'm like, oh, what is he hearing? What is he feeling? Vibrations and, all this different stuff.
We've definitely talked about this. I just don't know if we've talked about it on microphone. Maybe. Because we have a fundamental disagreement, which is Matt Murdock is not superpowered. That is just like true, right? Like the Netflix show, I'm not saying it's true necessarily in the Disney show, but in the Netflix show, they do a lot of work to make it really clear that he doesn't have superpowers. He's just got these heightened senses. It's like the peak of like the human sense of what these things can do, and then they fucking blow it when they do the world on fire scene because the visualization is silly. But yeah, like I don't think that in the Netflix version he's superpowered, and then here they lean on the hearing a lot more as a device, but I still don't think it's like superpowers, because he doesn't get superpowers. He just stick trains him to make all of his senses hyper, except sensitive and useful and all that stuff. That's just my view anyway, and so it's not part of how I think about the character necessarily, or it's not a focal point for me.
I mean, if I were to like be a contrarian though, but like I feel like in the Marvel universe there is like an inherent like magic in human capability. Like for example, like meditating to make your wounds heal faster and stuff like that. Like I feel like there's some Iron Fist magic system going on there, where it's channeling your chi, gives you power and stuff like that. Like I feel like it's pretty blurred sometimes. Like someone who trains themselves to the absolute limit has superpowers in a sense.
Okay. I know what you mean. But anyway, that's all to say, like it didn't occur to me. I also think that like it's such a quiet moment that it feels like it's later. I don't know. You get that establishing shot of the city.
Also, where are they? Like they're Karen and Matt. They're in front of a boat or a ship.
They're basically at the edge of Red Hook. So Red Hook extends from where they are all the way out to the left.
Yeah. Okay. And that's where like Frank is.
Well, that's
we know that?
That's Fisk's compound. Yeah, and we know that that's where Frank is because he sneaks into Red Hook through the same street, the same gate where the Irish killed the truck driver that was delivering one of Vanessa's shipments, which kicks off all of the stuff with Luca. So we've already established that's the way into the port.
And why are Matt and Karen there in the first place?
Because they've put together that Red Hook is the freeport and that Fisk is going to build his own city-state. And so Matt is presumably there to take down Fisk before he can produce the city-state. what they're actually doing there specifically isn't necessarily established. Like,
Yeah. Because him and Punisher team up, and then they go, oh, we'll go on our separate ways, and they just end up back at the same place anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Odd choice, but hey, what are you going to do? The important sort of thrust of this conversation is Matt is sort of gearing himself up to go down there, and she stops him with some pretty logical rationale. And, you know, it's classic Karen behavior where she just knows how to talk to Matt. And he's lying there, and the imagery is brilliant where he's sort of lying, he's got his back against a rebar, and he's sort of catching his breath and holding his side. And she's sort of lying next to him. And you've got the city of New York framed behind Matt Murdock, but it's dark because of the power outage. And there's a couple of emergency lights here or there. And by Matt's head, there's like a single red blinking light. And Karen says, look, Fisk has the courts.
He's got the cops. He's got
an army.
So you can go down there and you can fight him. You will probably die. But you can't beat him. Not like that. You have to be smart. I am right there with you, okay? I feel lost. I feel angry. I feel fucking helpless. The whole city is there. Do you remember I once asked you what it was like living in the darkness? You remember what you said?
It's not dark. It's like 1,000 suns.
Yeah.
And this is where I wanted to bring up the sort of the red blinking light sort of motif, and the way that sort of I guess the ideology that Matt then delivers in his next scene. So we get an interstitial that we've already talked about where Fisk recruits Heather. He enacts an 8 p.m. curfew and declares martial law, and says all vigilante activity is basically illegal and punishable by death. And what this basically means is that the police will just kill people and then frame them as being vigilantes. You know, we understand how policing works in this way. And then we get the follow-up.
Right, and we get that scene of the looter.
Oh, it's pretty rough. He's like, that's just a kid. He's like, no. And then he pulls the kid's beanie down. And it looks a bit like the Daredevil Season 3 mask. It's got the white rim.
Well, it looks exactly like it.
Yeah. That's a missed opportunity. Make Daredevil wear a beanie, please. That's funny to me. He might wear a beanie. Does he wear a beanie in the fight with Dex in the news office?
No, he's wearing his like normal black outfit.
I don't think he is, because he's there for a meeting in a suit. I think he's wearing like a zipped up turtleneck and like a beanie. He might be wearing a beanie.
Oh, yeah, you might be right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Fisk has gone full Moscow fascist. It's martial law. And the city is clearly spiraling and reeling from this. And then we get the follow-up, which I then want to put in conversation with that Matt and Karen scene, where Matt is doing a bit of an end of comic book movie monologue moment, where he says, you know, when I was a kid after the accident, I thought God had taken my sight.
When I grew up, came to believe in an exchange, giving me a special destiny. Like a mask and a purpose could save my life.
Didn't it?
No. It wasn't the mask. It was me needing to believe in it that saved me. My mistake was thinking I was immune to the darkness. And I let it creep inside me. I let the dark power me. I threw Poindexter off that rooftop. Karen, have to kill him. The truth is, ever since Foggy died, I didn't know who I was anymore.
Foggy believed in you. Whatever you want to call yourself, whatever's behind the mask, behind your eyes. That's wrath, that's mercy, that's the dark and the light. He knew all of it. All of it. He knew you. I do too.
And then I'll talk about Matt's little speech about rebellion. But yeah, it seems like Matt finally trying to address the trauma that he's been avoiding this whole time, or trying to talk about it. Yeah, what do you... Because then we get... So this is where the blinking red lights thing comes in. Because they're talking about light and dark, and this show is very interested in the strobing of red lights, over Matt Murdock. And, we get at the end of the first episode where he's standing in the city streets and there's the strobing red light as the Daredevil theme kicks in. Here, we obviously had the blinking red light of the skyscraper, and it winks out when Matt agrees with Karen. And, red flashing lights is like warning or alarm or something like that. But then at the end, when he's giving his sort of speech about rebellion, as we zoom in through the glass of Josie's, we get the pulsing red light again. And I don't know how much it's supposed to be. Obviously, it's like a thematic device, or it's an aesthetic device. But I think that last usage of it is supposed to, if the pulsing red is like his true nature that he's resisting the whole time, right? At the end of that first episode, it's that old familiar rage coming back. Those other usages of it are like him either giving in or resisting that darkness within him, that wrath. Here it seems like with the shot of Josie's and him in the Daredevil armor and the red pulsing light, it seems that if previously that was something he was resisting because he was afraid it would control him, now he's in control of it, right? He's accepted it. It's what Karen says. It's, behind the mask, behind your eyes, wrath and mercy, light and dark. He's more than one thing. He's both the light and he's the rage, right? He's the alarm and he's the calm. There's something there in this framing. I don't know if that resonates with either of you, with sort of how this all comes together.
I mean, yes, that makes sense. Logical. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think much of the red light, but what I was thinking about was that sort of like resolution of dark and light within Matt. Like I was like, but it also like I was like, is that a new revelation for Matt that he can be both things? I understand that there's some like more sort of specific nuance to it in this series. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of lean toward the light being more of an aesthetic choice than a necessarily a thematic one. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels much more evocative than like literal to me. But I could see someone writing a pretty compelling paper, going through the examples of it and putting some kind of reading together. In particular, because the inverse is Fisk being bathed in white light a lot of the time. And of course, you get the blue light with Dex, and then, when Matt gets shot, you go from the red to the blue. That there's something there of like the color palettes of like Matt is red, Fisk is white, Dex is blue. You could do something with that. But like honestly,
all the characters in the Defenders have a color.
That's true.
Jessica Jones is purple, Luke is yellow, and Iron Fist is green.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
plenty of lights to go around.
Plenty of colors.
Plenty of
left.
light filters. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I was curious if I could find another meaning for the blinking red, because the first thought is in traffic that a blinking red means that there's a problem and you need to come to a complete stop. And I wonder if all of the different examples that you could list throughout the entire show, of where there is a blinking red light on Matt, are moments where he has like a huge like crossroads or something in front of him, and that blinking red light is like, you should come to a stop, you need to really evaluate because this is a major turning point for you.
Could be. That's not a thing here, so I wouldn't have picked up on that. But like, that's what that means. Yeah. We don't even have like an equivalent to that, I don't think. Because like when traffic lights are out, they'll flash like yellow, right, Pat? Like if the system's down, like you ever have that, we come up to an intersection and like the system's down, so they just all flash yellow.
Yeah. Or like if this traffic lights are around a corner and it's like telling you that the ones around the corner are red, they'll have ones before the corner that are flashing yellow.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So if the lights were out and they were flashing yellow, then that would mean that you could proceed with caution. But if they're flashing red, then that means come to a complete stop and treat it like it's a 4-way stop sign kind of thing.
Right. Interesting. Well, there you go. I just learned something. That's funny. Yeah, I think this goes to like the project of what this type of coverage lets us do, which is like, I don't think it's any one thing. And I think that if we were to do a single episode talking about this whole season, it's the kind of thing where we would say, yeah, the blinking red light represents blah. And we would just be like, well, we've kind of solved that, so like, let's move on. I think it's more interesting to me that there isn't a simple way to understand what this is doing. And yeah, if you're listening to this, I mean, there's a free paper in that, if you're curious and you have the time. I'd love to read an article that sort of delves into that in some more nuance.
One of my favorite blinking red lights in the show is the hallway fight from season 2, where he's got the chain in his hand and the gun in his other hand.
Yeah,
that was sick.
That is pretty gnarly. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have an easy way to find and look at this right now, but you were really focused on that blinking red light when Karen and Matt are having their talk, but I recall thinking about how vivid the starlight was, because you didn't have all of the light pollution from the city.
Yeah, that too.
And I think that may have been a lot more of the focus of the shot, because they're talking about the 1,000 suns or whatever the phrase is. Mm-hmm. Much more than the blinking red light, even though that's an interesting thought to see if that is what that ongoing theme might be. Because this definitely was a moment of like, stop, you don't need to run in there, you need to rethink this.
Totally. Well, and you make a good point, which is like, the camera tilts up and it is a crazy amount of stars. Yeah, as you say, because there's no light pollution because the city's in blackout. It's a very good looking shot, and I like that the buildings occlude the night sky behind Matt. So Matt is like framed against like a black series of buildings, and then you have the night sky, which just made me think of the fucking logo for the show. I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, it was on my second watch through. I was like, oh, that's like kind of interesting. Yeah.
This episode has some really pretty shots. I like the one, I think it's just straight after this, where it's like just a huge wide shot of the city, and then it match cuts to like the morning.
Yeah.
And as the power comes back on, that was a really good looking shot.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, they clearly sort of distributed their budget quite wisely, I think, because this seems like an expensive episode of TV compared to the last one, which was a bunch of people in a ballroom. So good.
Also expensive,
but different expensive. Yeah. All right. Well, let me give us the little ending speech here, and then we can wrap up with our sort of overall thoughts of the show. So we get Matt's comic book ass ending monologue, a la Matt Reeves the Batman.
I thought you were gonna say a la Ben Affleck Daredevil. Doesn't he do that at the end of that movie?
Who? Oh, he does.
Yeah, I think he does have a monologue at the end.
Yeah, he gives a similar sort of monologue at the end.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I need to protect this city and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. But this one's way cooler because it's, a little bit about rebellion. So Matt says, the framing is that we only realize this as we pan. So this is like intercut with shots of all the characters we've met so far. We get a bunch of the people that were doing Talking Heads interviews that reappear. We get Angela, Hector's niece. We obviously get BB, and it's sort of all these people reeling from the police instead of looking at the police with fear. And Matt says, I can't see my city, but I can feel it. The system isn't working, and it's rotten, corrupt. But this is our city, not his. And we can take it back together. The weak, the strong, all of us. Resist, rebel, rebuild. Because we are the city without fear. Now, I have to admit, this did give me goosebumps the first time I watched it. Like, Charlie Cox has a gravity in his delivery here that really makes this land. The slow pan in on Josie's with all of the newspaper clippings of like all the shit that Fisk has done, and it's Matt in the middle, framed by the blinking red light. It's just television, guys. You know?
Cinema.
Yeah. There's not, I don't have a lot here on the speech. It's just fucking cool. And it's cool to end on a note of like hope and rebellion. And I'm really excited that the show is continuing with the sort of focus on replicating some of the IRA stuff and the Ireland stuff. And, I'm curious to see just how left the politics of this show end up being. The realization that like Matt as an individual is insufficient and he needs to build an army of the, I don't know, perhaps the the proletariat to defeat the bourgeoisie. Who could say? But yeah, it's cool. Sometimes I like it when the comic book show does comic book shit. You know what I mean? It's fun.
This was the exact opposite of what a comic book would have actually done, though. If he's like, I'm putting together an army, it would have been people who could fight instead of like the old bartender and his law partner. And like, it was just people. It was just people that were saying we're going to stand up against. It's not an army.
Yeah, he hasn't.
Well, you need more than just soldiers in an army.
Yeah. Also, he hasn't built the army yet. That's going to be the project of the next 2 fucking seasons, dude. This is
so like in a comic, it would have been like Elektra, and she would have had ninjas with her. Like that, like Hulk would have been there. Like that's what I thought it was going to be when he was like, let's build an army.
Yeah, could you imagine?
I don't know. No, She-Hulk, because they had a thing. No, they had a thing.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. Hulk endorsed class struggle. Hulk support class warfare.
I was with you.
No,
I was with you. Like how dope
the monologue.
It was.
I meant the monologue is how comic books end, not literally the people in the room. But that's extremely funny, Darth. Yes.
Hulk sees means of production.
Yeah, I wish that they had like 2 things that they could have done differently there. One is just take him out of the costume. If they take him out and just have it be Matt Murdock, who's assembling this group of normal people to rise up and defend their city, that's perfectly fine. But the fact that it's Daredevil walking in as the head of this rebellion, and it's normal people who can't actually do a rebellion, at least as we see it in most like superhero type shows, right? I don't know, that really like ruined all of the coolness for me, and I was like, I'm just gonna ignore the visuals and just listen to this end bit.
I sometimes have no idea what you want. Like it, because they put the comic book guy in the costume at the end when he did the cool speech. If they hadn't done that, you'd have been like, they didn't put him in the fucking armor. I don't. There's no pleasing some people. Okay, that's all I'll say. Darth is a man that is impossible to please. I'm so sure you love this.
Andor taught me that anyone can be in a rebellion, Darth.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
And history.
I know.
Taught
I
me
was
that.
trying so hard not to bring up Andor.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like, the city's in chaos. I mean, that's a pretty what's what I'm looking for. Like, it's an ending that just creates a lot of room for chaos and things to happen. But at the same time, I'm like skeptical about like how much they'll commit to that, because Marvel has that thing where like they don't want events from movies and shows to spill over into their other projects and stuff. Like with unless it's an Avengers kind of project. So like will the city going into martial law impact other Disney Plus shows, or will they want other Disney Plus characters to appear in season 2 of Daredevil and have that resolved before season 2 of their shows? I don't know.
Because they just greenlit
That's where my mind was
Hawkeye
at.
season 2, and that presumably takes place in
Did they?
New York. Yeah.
I hope they agreed to pay Jeremy Renner his salary.
Yeah. Ugh, that was a really interesting one. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes rule of cool for me on this one. Is where I kind of landed. Plus, like,
I was also sitting over here. Mine's a joke. Go ahead.
No. Do the joke. Yeah, you have the floor.
So, presumably, Matt is calling all of these people to assemble at Josie's, and he's not saying, "Hi, this is Daredevil." He's calling up and saying, "Hey, this is Bat. Can you meet me at Josie's?" So then he shows up there, but he's in the costume, and they're all like, "Wait, we need to have Matt here before we officially start because he called us all." And so Daredevil is like, "Oh, hold on, let me go get him," and then he has to go change.
They just it's a fucking.
I'm just laughing at the idea of him answering the phone as Daredevil. Yes, right? This is Daredevil.
You've reached the devil's office. That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's the show. We get a little tag at the end where Frank escapes by glad handing this dude, Anthony, and he kills him real quick and then gets out, which we've already talked about. And that's, that's Born Again. Baby, that's the whole freaking thing. So we did it. Congratulations, everybody. We made it through Disney's show, and it wasn't unbearably bad, which I feel like is the current watermark for Disney Plus. So there you go. Good job, all involved. Scarter Payne really lifting his weight here and bringing in some incredible instincts as a showrunner. I love to see Bernthal back in his full capacity, doing what he does best. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any high-level thoughts you wanna go out on here as we wrap up our Daredevil in the Details project?
I mean, they had this and then Andor come out back to back, so I don't know if we can talk smack about Disney Plus anymore.
There are exceptions that prove the rule, fellas. Come on, keep up.
I want season 2 to go even further down the chaos rabbit hole. I don't like, I feel like that's what you'd intuit is that this season ends on, the city going into martial law, and then season 2 sort of wraps that up. I want season 2 to like get even worse, and go into even more peril. That's what I want to happen.
I want the full. I want the full.
Just waiting. What if they're just waiting for real life and they're just like observing what's happening in America and then they're writing it? So they're waiting to see what's going to happen.
Brother. Yeah. Kind of what I said before though, which is like none of this shit is new. but I understand what you mean. Yes. I want full dystopia. I want like a neo-noir dystopian like city where Fisk is in charge and they're like running between giant spotlights at night, you know, trying to do heist missions and stuff to undo his power. Yeah, I think that would be a really cool different direction to take this in. I want to see and that's where I would think that like the Defenders could be a really good fit for the show. Is if you bring them in a capacity like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most salient thing on my mind is like that this is like just such a good opportunity to bring in the rest of the Defenders into the Disney world.
Yeah.
Because they of course like it just fits so perfectly into the events of what's happening right now. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, someone like Mike Coulter brings such a presence to you know, the version of Luke Cage he puts on screen that you could really feel. I mean, in some ways it might undercut the angle they're going for, which is like this rebellion has to be a rebellion of normal people. But I could also see like the lieutenants being the Defenders type of thing. Yeah. Guess I'm interested to see where that goes, but yeah, I don't know. They're talking about March 2026, which seems impossibly close. So I don't know if they're actually filming at the moment or not.
Yeah, I mean, when like the first couple episodes were coming out, I was already seeing photos of the set from season 2.
Oh, really?
Of like like stills, or like not stills, but like, you know, people taking BTS photos of the production. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So they were really confident this would be received well then, huh?
Yeah. Right.
That's interesting. Because they don't do. I mean, I guess you make a good point, which is Disney have no safe bets except apparently Andor and Daredevil, which is interesting. If they just run out of goodwill for everything else, do you think? Like, I don't know. These ones are still good. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, Darth, any final thoughts on Daredevil?
Thank you for the clarification, because I was about to go off on Andor. I totally loved it. I will be down for further discussion. I would love to dedicate time to watch all the way through before the next season comes out, which won't happen, but that would be a neat idea to take everything that we've talked about and kind of see how things actually mesh once you know where everything is going. Yeah, really cool that they were able to do such a good job with different showrunners and a different overhead production company and all this stuff, and still came out with a pretty solid show that for the most part tries to stick really well to what the original was doing. Which a whole lot of franchises don't have that success.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know. Me and Pat across the length of this show we talked about Daredevil for something in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 hours last time I did the math. So we've been talking about the show a lot, and that's on top of, you know, the hours going into the pre-coverage of actually watching the thing and taking notes and research and all that stuff. And like the overwhelming thing that I keep sort of coming back to as I look back on both Born Again and like our sort of coverage of the Netflix show is obviously the first and most obvious thing, which is what me and Darth learned during the Sherlock coverage, is that the method really does work and pay off. But the second thing is like, I think that it's a show that keeps reinventing itself, and it's really fun to see this remix of the show in Born Again reinvent itself again. I'm gonna be willing to take those risks, and I think a lot of other shows, when they do legacy sequels, whatever you want to call that terminology, right? They try not to take risks. They try and be safe. And this feels, there are safe elements, but this does feel like a swing. Like they took a swing and they're going to keep trying to take that swing. And that's more important to me than whether the swing is good, which is a very postmodern thing to say. But just in our current moment, it's like really hard to get these things that are swings funded because there's been so many flops of things that feel safe or feel like they should be successful. So it's cool to see them giving the showrunners enough rope to try and do the thing they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that'll do it for our Daredevil coverage. I haven't announced it on the show. If you're a Patreon, you already know this. But for everybody else, our next unit of the show, now that we're wrapped up with Daredevil, is going to be on the post-apocalypse subgenre of fiction. So we next episode are going to be sort of kicking that off with a film, which is The World, the Flesh, and the Devil from 1959. It was directed by Ranald McDougall. And is stars Harry Belafonte at the height of his powers, the peak of his fame. It's a really interesting film. I think we're going to have some really great conversations. And then off the back of that, we are then going to kick off the full unit with some TV, some books, and some other films. I'm super excited to get into it. It is what I've been studying for sort of the last sort of 18 months. So I'm really curious. I'm interested to bring a lot of the research I've been doing sort of to bear on the show, and hopefully, maybe, we'll finally see Darth's new podcast set. Who could say? I don't know what the reveal is that we're waiting for, but we'll find out. Excellent. I think that's everything I have. So yeah, the World, the Flesh, and the Devil, 1959, directed by Ranald McDougall. So that'll be our next episode. It's been really exciting doing the Daredevil in the Details coverage. Like I said, next year we might dip back in for season 2. We'll see what our production schedule looks like. But to all the patrons that have supported us and everyone in the comments who are leaving their thoughts and opinions and having really, thoughtful responses to what we do, really appreciate it. It's kind of what it's all about. And of course, thank you to all of the subscribers on Patreon who helped sort of chip in ideas along the way. And we look forward to kicking off a new era of the show when we talk about the post-apocalypse. So I think with that, Pat, where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and SoundCloud. Our podcast is A Method to the Madness. It's right there.
Oh, too slow.
There we go. We have a website, amttm.com. You can find our episodes and socials from there.
Love it. Darth, now that you are YouTube man full-time, pluggables, what you got?
YouTube, Darth, DARTH''D. I've got a script that I am hopefully going to finish up in the next couple days. It's over 20 pages at this point, so it is definitely a long one. Very aggressively titled They Ruined Star Wars, and then that's not actually at all what it's about. So
Perfect. So it's a rug pull. I love that.
yes.
I've taught you well. This is gonna be the Is Rey and Mary Sue drama all over again, and I'm here for it. Go check that out. All the links, as always, in the show notes. If you've made it this far, you know what it is. ZeroIndent.com for everything we do. Patreon.com/ZeroIndent to support us, where you can get over 10 years worth of archived Patreon exclusive content, as well as the Zero Indent bonus episodes. Like we said, here we will be doing a Patreon bonus episode on, what did I say? I've already forgotten. What was the film? Michael Clayton. We'll be doing, I'm going to write that down. We'll be talking about Tony Gilroy's Michael Clayton, starring George Clooney, as a bonus episode. So look forward to that. Otherwise, wherever you find this, whether it's your podcast catcher, podcast platform, YouTube, however you consume it, the best way to help us out is to give us a comment, a like, a rating, a review. It helps more people find the show. We don't do any advertising outside of our network. We appreciate the heck out of it. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Whether you've joined us just for the Born Again journey or you're a ride and die from the beginning of Daredevil in the Details, we appreciate the heck out of it. And as always, it's not been entirely unpleasant to see you again. If you like these handcrafted studies of genre fiction, please head over to ZeroIndent.com, or patreon.com/ZeroIndent if you'd like to consider supporting us. Even if you just give us a follow on Patreon, that helps us out. Leave a comment, a like, and if you're in a financial position to do so, you can support us and get access to early content, additional videos, director's commentaries, audio diaries, and all kinds of different things we have coming up. It really makes a difference helping keep independent media crit alive. Once again, that is ZeroIndent.com or patreon.com/ZeroIndent if you'd like to support us.